Guess we're ready.
Okay, Dave, when they're ready for the show.
Yes, sir. Okay, the meeting will now come to order. We'll begin with introductions. So we'll begin with town staff. Dawn?
Dan Beret, Town Planner.
And no one else from the town. Okay, for commission members, we'll begin introductions on my left.
Victoria Chet,
Bob Ellsworth.
Chantal Foster.
Carolyn Freeman.
Robert Taylor.
Okay. First item is to accept the agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the agenda is accepted as presented. First item of business is a public hearing for application 22-08, 54 Riverview Street, request for a special permit modification for a 60-foot by 60-foot concrete pad and hoop house structure for glass bead blasting and power washing. Application and property of Verdon NE LLC, map 3, lot 8, zone R10. Would someone like to speak on behalf of this application?
Yes, you would.
Okay. If you would introduce yourself, please.
Thomas Maxwell for Verdon. Got a few handouts in addition to what you may have already had.
So you're getting this on the screen so the public can see it?
I don't think he brought that now.
Sure.
Can you take a, okay,
Sure.
what do you do about that?
Well, they're making the presentation to you, so I don't think the public's going to be here for the subdivision.
Okay.
Just to start, in addition to the sheets of paper I brought, just to acquaint you with Verdon a bit, it's a family-owned business, Australian-owned. In April of this year, Verdon purchased the Yankee Boat Works in that area, a property of about 30 acres. The principal business driver for that was Verdon has been awarded a contract by the U.S. Coast Guard to retrofit the entire fleet of 47-foot motor lifeboats. Actually, there's a picture of one on the back of the handout I gave. The number of lifeboats that will be retrofitted on the East Coast, it's about 65. West Coast, another 45, 50, depending on the Coast Guard's mood. But it takes about 6 months to do a retrofit. Part of the retrofit process is to power wash the boats and then bring them into a shop, strip them down, add the structural integrity back into the boat with aluminum parts that are welded in place, and then replace propulsion systems, navigation systems, seats, all the other control systems that are used on this boat. This is the primary open ocean rescue vessel the Coast Guard uses from North Carolina all the way to the top of Maine. Same thing on the West Coast, the top of California all the way to the top of Washington State. Verdon is investing in the community. When the property was purchased with the intent of retrofitting motor lifeboats, there were 12 employees on site. Currently, we're up to 46. At peak rate, there'll be about 75, maybe more. The people that we've added are high-tech workforce folks, assemblers, electricians, aluminum welders, engineers, planners, things of that nature, to support the program. The particular facility chosen to perform the power washing and the glass bead blasting is a hoop house. I think there's a picture of it there. That's a sample picture. It's, that one's located somewhere down on the Long Island Sound. Even though the photo shows that the entry is open, while we're blasting and water blasting or water washing the boats, it's not only motor lifeboats that'll be done, but it's also available for the marina customers as well. That opening will be closed though. We'll have tarps on it to enclose and contain, number one, the water sprays. As you may have seen from the diagrams that have been provided earlier, the concrete pad is sloped. There'll be a vacuum boom to contain water and recycle it. It's not dripping out into the concrete or the gravel or anything like that. Same thing with glass bead blasting. It'll be enclosed. The glass beads typically don't migrate on a sloped surface, but will be swept up and recycled as well. That would be the normal expectation. Process-wise, it takes about 2 days to glass bead blast a boat. The plan, obviously, since we have no lights in it, is daylight only, working hours only, daylight working. The same thing with water washing or water blasting the surface. It is a high-pressure water washer. It can actually peel the stripes off the side of the boat, as well as the skid surfaces that are on the top of the decking areas. After the process is over, we hand paint the boat with rollers for stripes and decals. It's not spray painted, so there's no application of spray paint going on for this process. Anyway, we look forward to favorable opinions from the committee, and need to get going fairly soon. There is a bit of urgency associated with the plan, insofar as we just received our second boat 2 days ago from the Coast Guard. Any questions that I can answer?
I have a question. Thank you. That was helpful. I just have a question about separating. You talked a little bit about how you have glass beads, and the glass beads knock the stuff off of the boat.
Yeah.
And then, can you just explain a little bit what happens to the stuff that gets knocked off? And what you said that the water is captured, but how does all that stuff get separated? Because you said you recycled the glass beads, so I'm just curious how that all works.
The dirt, or I'll start with power washing. The water drains naturally. Whatever residues, like pieces of the deck surface, skid surface, or the paint stripes, they lay on the ground. We've seen that in the facility out in Bellingham, Washington already. We sweep it up and dispose of it the way you normally would. Glass beads, they get swept up, put back in a hopper. The hopper has a separator, so some of the dirt falls out. Actually, some of the glass beads fall out too, so they're disposed of in the same fashion. Does that answer? Yep.
Thank you.
Incidentally, the glass bead is to create a uniform matte finish on the outer hull of the boat.
Can you, what is a vacuum boom?
A vacuum boom is the vacuum plate is attached to
This, so, so this photograph that we have, this is the vacuum boom?
It's, right here, right?
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Okay, and that sits at the end
That
of the,
sits at
the bottom
X
of
and
the,
N, X and N of the.
Okay.
of the,
and it sucks up water
Correct,
because it's filtering out the particulates.
correct.
And then the particulates are disposed of,
Yeah, swept out.
and how are they disposed of? Just because like bottom paint has, you know, heavy metals in it. So I'm just wondering, like, what, because that's what comes off the boat, right?
Yeah, paint, it's not lead paint, it's whatever.
Well, but in the marina, there, it could be bottom paint, which can have heavy
Right.
metals and things like
Typically
that,
the
so.
Power washer, we don't do glass blasting, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, yeah, you
Yeah.
should,
you should.
stand
You're
up.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Just trying to understand, because
We-
you're not just
we
doing
wouldn't
the,
We wouldn't do glass blasting on commercial or customer boats. That's not in the plan whatsoever. The power washing, yeah, that could be done. But it gets disposed in the normal, legal way.
Hi, Brett from Burton.
Just,
Brett,
Brett, just announce yourself in the mic.
yeah.
Hi, Brett from Burton. So to answer your questions is, it's all part of our chemical disposal plan of the hazardous waste that goes off site. So it'll all be captured. So the vacuum boom is designed to capture the water and particulates that pick up. What we use pressure washer for is more to remove the non-skid tape. So it's like, you stick it down to your staircase. The Coast Guard boats have all this glued onto the top deck. It's a solid mat that gets on. We use pressure washer to take that off in sheets. So the water that's coming out has no real chemical point on the base. The sandblasting itself, the bulk of the boat is all aluminum hull. Bare aluminum, straight metal. So what it is to give it a dust coating finish. These are 30-year-old boats. The Coast Guard
Right.
want it to look like a new boat. So there's very minimal paint or anything that comes off. The recycling unit is disposed in our hazardous chemical plant that is removed from site. Nothing runs out. Our tapering comes through the front. We use a exhaust extraction fan that attaches to the side of the building to get any of the dust or any particulates in the air, is captured and recycled and caught. Any of the removal process of any of the other blast groups and points is run through our recycling plant. We actually have, it's probably a 5-gallon bucket at most off one of these 47-foot boats in any of the paint that we actually remove. It's the thin bottom plate, and that's about it. These boats are just a bare aluminum hull, so we actually dispose of and recycle the unit. Glass bead can be recycled up to 4 to 5 times in our process. So we try to capture as much as possible for the cost effectiveness throughout everything. So everything's captured on the site and then recycled to be reused on the point. And then anything that isn't is disposed, captured, and then removed from site as part of our hazardous chemical plant. That's
There-
the answer to the
There
question.
was some mention of, work being done on some of the marina boats
Yep.
in this building as well, and those wouldn't be aluminum hulls,
So these,
and
yep.
they would have paint and
Yep.
bottom paint and,
Yep, so that's part of the whole process of sealing up the building. So the building's sealed from our dust points. Any blasting on these holes or anything is done exactly the same way. It's caught through our extraction system, and then our recycling system will capture and dispose of any of the units. We use all our processes to go through that.
okay.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you very
No,
much.
no worries.
How loud is this whole process? There's several residential homes that are relatively
Yep.
close.
So in the captured point, you obviously get a louder noise with the compressors and the machinery running. It's not really much more than the machinery running point. The pressure washer is probably your loudest point. It's just like a small, I guess how would I describe it? I haven't done the decibel points, but it's not a loud process. There is a reason we do it in the middle of the day points, because you want it to contain it to those points and short bursts. We're talking when we're turning over these boats and doing the pressure washing, it's around 1 a month for a 2-day period. So we're trying to minimise the process as much as possible in that area. We're really setting up in that sense. Yep. So yeah.
Is the equipment housed within the hoop house, or is it exterior to the hoop
Exterior
house?
on the outside, we're using some of the local blasting companies' billings to be able to help with some of the compressor. The large compressor is probably the loudest of the 2 units that it runs.
The diagram that shows the concrete pad, 60 by 60, there's 20 feet of it dedicated to the support, the process equipment that would be hosed into the building.
And it's a diesel compressor just because of the power point we wanted on the outside. So
by introduction, Brett Looker is the Director of Operations for this coast as well as the West Coast.
And you'll be doing this year-round?
Year-round, yes.
Yeah, right now, we've got 2 boats in so far. That'll ramp up to 6 next year,
6 next year,
And
12
then
the following year.
12 the following year. So we're ramping up, learning the process and ironing out the retrofit.
Yeah, so the next 2 years is really a lower rate of production, and we do a higher rate for the
Yeah.
last 2 to 3 years of the program.
Anything else we can answer?
Any other questions from commission members? Okay, this is a public hearing, so we will entertain any question or comments from members of the public. If anyone has one, please approach the podium and introduce yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name's Virginia Duclos, and I'm a business owner in town and a resident of the area adjacent to the application. Thank you very much. You did a great job answering a lot of the questions I had, and welcome to Portland.
Thank you.
Yeah, look forward to you guys helping us with our tax base. But my concern is, a lot of the questions that you answered about the noise, I would really like to know a specific decibel level
Okay.
and the time frame of your work.
Yeah, so our blasting points during the middle of the day.
Brett, could you just speak into the mic?
So the blasting times will be in the middle of the day, usually between 9 and 4. Will be our operations time. I don't actually have the decimal points with me. I'm sorry, that's one I don't have the noise level on that point. Capturing it in the building is a better way of doing it to reduce the noise. The reason we pick this hoop house is because it will deflect a lot of the noise points. And we are very mindful of the community side of things, and we want to keep it in the middle of the day operation, so we're not interfering with anything outside.
And if there is a noise problem, is there any way to noise proof that particular, what do you call it? The building, the roof, house?
There is ways to do it, add additional insulation or additional tarping if required.
Yeah.
We can if modifications required on that point. We try to limit our offshore operation points to that middle of the day just because of that noise points. So we're very mindful of that.
All right, and my other thing is though, the only question after you said 75 people, maybe more, is there a cap? Because that means 75 more cars going by my house twice a day.
Yep.
And it's a residential with animals, kids, people walking.
So 75 would be is around about our max area. We may have additional in some of the periods just in contractors and stuff coming in. This is more on the Coast Guard themselves. I can't give, the reason we say more or less is this is a Coast Guard. The Coast Guard are on site with us 24/7. They can have up to 5 to 19 personnel depending on their time. So yeah, it varies around 10 to 20 people on that point, and that's not a consistent base. That just depends on the Coast Guard themselves. They're supposed to allocate up to 19 people. Right now they're telling us it's about 5.
All right, I thank you for your answers, and, you know, we're just, it's a residential area, we work very nicely with, Riverside, and, the marina too before, and also, I forgot one thing, lighting. Can you please be mindful of, what do they call that, lighting that's, you're supposed to have diffused lighting and things like
Yep.
that?
Or aimed down.
Aimed down.
Right,
Yep.
right, all right, so
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah,
That's no
this facility has no lights,
Okay.
so it's not, it won't be a problem for you.
And we picked that specific location just to try and keep it as far away as what we could. We can try to do. It's the best location to live there.
All right, well, thank you very much for your explanations.
No problem.
Thank you, everybody.
So, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So you said that you could have up to 19 Coast Guard, would they be coming on the boat?
So
And then you take the boat out of the water?
Carolyn, can you speak into the mic?
Oh. So I'm wondering what the transportation is for the Coast Guard
So the
people.
Coast Guard are part of our contract. They are there as engineers to watch over the program itself. So they are on site with us. Actually, the upstairs part of our office is where the Coast Guard actually reside in the offices on the Yankee side. So they're there 24/7. They are part of the community as well. A lot of the guys that Five have on site are all bought houses in the local area and have moved to the community to develop into that as well. So yeah, they are part of our program. You will have on the basis around 10 Coast Guard when they're delivering a boat. They'll generally drive them up. Recently they've been towing them up because the boats are in retrofit stage, so they've given us some of the older ones. They're driving up, they'll then get on a boat and retake the new boat back, so there will be white water and boat rate.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Members of the public? Anybody online, in the chat? Nothing online. So the question, the outstanding question about the decibel level of the equipment. How does the commission feel about moving forward on this without an answer to that? Guess I'm looking for a general consensus.
So they will be subject to the noise ordinance, but regardless of your approval, just to
Good point.
let you know about that.
Okay, good point.
Yeah.
Which is 70?
It depends, there's a lot of factors. It's in the town ordinances. The police are generally the ones who enforce the noise ordinance. And it varies between zones. So residential zones have a lower decibel allowance than industrial zones. So I don't even think it's 70, but it would be measured at the property line, not at the source.
Okay. 70 sticks in my brain. I don't know.
I mean, I'd have to double check.
It's just
Yeah, okay.
And would that measurement be taken prior to
It would not,
allowing operation? Would not?
no, the noise ordinance is enforced on a basis of complaints. Yep. So the last time that we looked into something like that, and the applicant at the time did provide some of that information prior, was the Portland S&G site, the large sand and gravel operation out by Paley Farms. The neighborhood at, what is that?
County Way.
Yes, that they were the most concerned.
Yep.
Thank you, Chantal.
I have one more question.
Sure.
There's no liner under this, it's just a slab, correct?
Slab of concrete with steel plating on top of it, it seals it off, so we can sweep up the glass bead, so we don't have a contract surface. So there is a steel floor that will sit on top of the concrete slab, and inside includes the pipes in there.
There's a sealed floor on top of the concrete
On top of the
slab?
concrete, there's a steel floor that sits on
Steel
top.
floor.
Steel, okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, did Dan's explanation of the noise measurement generate any additional questions? Okay, hearing none, no further questions from the public. May I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the public hearing for application 22-08 is now closed. Any further discussion again amongst commission members? Yeah, thank you.
The only thing I wonder, is there like a little wall on the slab, or it's just a flat slab? Like this, is there any kind of barrier wall? I'm looking at the plans and I don't.
I believe
that's
it's,
what this is, right?
I believe it's a flat slab that's sloped down.
There is actually a wall.
There's a
yeah.
little knee wall, right?
Okay, all right, well, we can't ask them anymore because the public hearing is
Okay.
closed.
That's what I thought I was
Okay.
looking at here, it's a little knee wall.
I would trust your interpretation then.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, then, do we have a motion, Dan?
We do.
Chantal, are you up to reading? Would you like me to read?
Yeah.
I'll read. Okay, motion to approve application 22-08, 54 Riverview Street, request for special permit modification for 60-foot by 60-foot concrete pad and hoop house structure for glass bead blasting and power washing. Application and property of Burdon NE LLC, map 3, lot 8, zone R10, as shown on a site of plan entitled Zoning Location Survey Yankee Boatyard, prepared by BSC Group, a narrative submitted by the applicant, and based on all plans, renderings, and information submitted, testimony provided, and subject to the following instructions and conditions that are integral to this approval. That this approval will expire in 5 years, that's number one. Number two, that 3 paper copies of the final revised plan and 1 Mylar be submitted to the Planning and Zoning Department for endorsement by an officer of the commission. The endorsed Mylar shall be filed on the land records within 90 days as per zoning regulation section 10.5.3.2.a. 3, that any exterior light fixtures must comply with zoning regulation section 8 and must be approved by the zoning enforcement officer prior to installation. Number 4, that the applicant address any outstanding comments from the town engineer's memo dated 10/20/22. Number 5, that a zoning permit be issued prior to the start of activity associated with this approval. Number 6, that the applicant meet any comments from the fire marshal after final submission of plans. Reasons: the proposal conforms to section 4 and 10.5 of the zoning regulations. May I have a second to the motion, please?
Seconded.
Okay, we'll now begin voting. Victoria, would you?
The only thing missing from that I heard during this was the hours that, gentleman said that they would be,
Right, normal business hours.
but I think you said 9 to.
I think it's 7:30 to 4, or
Yeah,
7:30 to.
Yeah.
We can't take any more information from you guys.
It's in here. It's in here.
Okay, yeah, we certainly can look.
Okay. Thought there was
It's,
some,
it says 7:30
To 6.
to 6.
To 6.
But he also
Normal
said,
business
but I think
he
you
also
made a
said it would
different
only be
statement.
when it was light out.
Well, yeah, there's no
'Cause they're
lighting
not gonna
facility,
add
so,
lighting.
yeah,
So
like right now,
If it gets dark at 5.
right.
They're not gonna be doing it.
okay.
Are you guys comfortable with 7:30 to 6? Yeah, no, we can discuss it and add a, we can add a,
So even after we've.
that's okay. Because a lot of towns do first, second, and then discuss it, so, yeah, it's okay.
Do we want to add it now then, Dan? This is,
Yeah, I would appreciate
Just the way-
specificity on the
so
time.
Just the way it is.
If you guys are comfortable with 7:30 to 6, we can put that, it's, as long as you guys are okay with that.
That's what it says here.
right. So I should add a condition, and hours of operation will be 7 AM to 6 PM.
I would say 7:30 based on there,
7:30 to
yeah,
7:30
to 6, yeah, as long as you guys are okay with that.
on,
Normal
Normal
business.
business,
Yeah, I would say Monday through Friday,
Monday through Friday.
yeah.
okay, what I added was hours of operation will be 7:30 AM to 6 PM, Monday through Friday.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Victoria.
Thank
So, I made the motion, Rob seconded the motion, so we'll now vote, and voting will begin on my left.
Aye, vote aye.
Victoria Shintown. Carolyn?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
And this is Bob, I vote aye. Any opposed? There would be none. Okay, the application is approved. Just for your future reference. Oh, I guess I got it. Okay. We will now move on to the next order of business, which is a public hearing for application 22-06, Penfield Hill Road and Stephen Tom Road, proposed 8 lots re-subdivision with wetlands on site. Application and property of Robert W. Olson, map 61, lot 14, zone RR. May I have a motion to open the public hearing, please?
So moved.
We'll give that to Chantal. May I have a second?
Seconded.
That's Rob. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, public hearing for application 22-06 is now open. Would someone like to speak on behalf of this application?
I just wanted to say
Oh,
something.
okay.
Before we start, I just want to say that I am affiliated with the Middlesex Land Trust, which is one of the abutters in the proposed subdivision, but it will not impact my decision-making ability.
Okay, thank you, Chantal. Okay, Frank, you go ahead.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening. For the record, Frank Magnata, the consulting engineer working for the applicant, Robert Olson, for the subdivision located at Stephen Tom Road and Penfield Hill Road. Because I have drawings that were colored up for the application that the audience really can't see from some places, I have an assistant, Philip, who's going to be scrolling through these drawings that I have on the placard here, that they can see them in the audience on that screen, and the commission can see the actual drawings here. I think, am I in your way, Robbie?
I can see.
I see. First two drawings are a title sheet and a boundary survey, so I've jumped over to, this is the record subdivision map for the property. To give you orientation, Penfield Hill Road is to the left side of the drawing and veers off, and then Stephen Town Road comes across the top. The Land Trust property abuts this area it to the rear here, and there are residential lots to the on the right side of the drawing on Stephen Tom Road. Basically, a total of 8 lots, 2 lots fronting out on essentially Penfield Hill Road, and the remainder of the lots, 6 lots here fronting on the northern section of Stephen Tom Road. In this drawing, you will also see there's a lot here with a house on it. That is not part of the subdivision. It was a prior subdivision lot that was cut out of this parcel some years ago. Wetlands, as you can see in here, this hatched green area are the wetlands identified on the property. There's a smaller wetland on the corner here on Penfield Hill, going through a pair of very large culverts, I think 32-inch diameter culverts under the road there. There's a sizable wetland area here, which everything going into that wetland discharges through a 18-inch culvert going under Stephen Tom Road, which is located at the low point right here. 2 lots on the east side of that wetland and 4 lots on the west side here. 2 of those lots, the 2 larger lots here, are interior lots. The rest of them are frontage lots. Same thing out on Penfield Hill Road. Those are frontage lots. If you have any questions as I'm going through the sheets, that might be the time for the commission to say things. Have to go.
Any questions on this sheet? Okay.
The next sheet is, this is the watershed map that came out of the stormwater analysis that was prepared for the subdivision. It has the same orientation as the survey map that you just saw. Penfield Hill Road, Stephen Tom Road here. Does show a much larger area than just the subdivision because it's basically taking in all the watershed that discharges to the site. The site itself is this orange outline here. The 2 lots here, the 4 lots on the other side of the site. This area here that you see, this area to the east, this is the area that's located off the subdivision, but is part of the stormwater area that discharges basically all the way across into the subdivision, into that wetland, and then through the culvert and out to the north. As you can see, the off-site watershed is quite sizable in comparison to this part of the subdivision that discharges to that same culvert. That runoff was incorporated into the analysis because it basically sheet flow across the entire part of the subdivision, and it affects that culvert under Steve & Tom Road. The arrows that you see on here, these red arrows, are basically indicating a direction of flow. You might not be able to see the contours, but those are indicating flow direction. In this, basically, this is a number of smaller watersheds, but this is the total watershed that was analyzed for the site on this side. On the other side of the site, the watershed is basically just the two lots. There's a high point, basically a ridge that runs through the parcel here, and that's what divides the two watersheds in the two different directions.
Where is that high point line on the first map that you showed us?
I have to look at that. This is the survey map, is what you're talking here.
Yeah.
That line comes right through here. There's the existing house.
Right.
That high point comes right through here like this.
So up along the driveway of the existing house?
Yes, the house and that driveway are actually part of, right at the very, very top of that watershed.
And then the land
And
slopes.
it basically comes like this through the site. These are the 6 lots that discharge to this area. So there's a high point right through here, and that basically creates that divide, the 2 lots to Penfield Hill, and then the 6 lots coming the other way. Hard to see on the survey map because it doesn't show contours. But the area of the primary interest and the most activity, obviously, is the 6 lots, the 2 interior lots with paved driveways, and all of that activity in this area here is what's impacting most of the site and the runoff for the site.
And I'm sorry, Frank, but also the water is running over the 2 lots that are...
Yes, lots 7 and 8, which are right here. Yes, this entire watershed does sheet flow across both of those lots and into that large wetland. Yes. And there are several houses here along Penfield Hill. There's a house in the middle of this large area here. Chatham Hollow is basically off this area here, but really does not discharge onto this parcel. It discharges into the land trust property, and that basically discharges through this small wetland out on Penfield Hill. The very little of the land trust actually discharges to the north onto this property. The contours, if you can see them, the contours are running this way, so the flow is this way, and here the flow is that way. And there's a divide in here that sends the water to this wetland or down this small brook to Penfield Hill Road. Like I said, Chatham Hollow it doesn't show on this map, but it is located in this area here. It's not part of either of these watersheds, and even their stormwater from Chatham Hollow basically discharges into the land trust property.
So, when putting in houses, I'm assuming wells and septic systems, how will that affect the flow of the watershed?
When you say that, you mean the two lots?
Yeah.
It doesn't really. This water basically has to pass through that area. When the site plans are designed for this, the house well and septic, that has to recognize that there have to be swales around those houses to basically, protect the houses from this watershed and what's passing over it. But it's sheet flow. There's no concentrated flow. So that's only the protection.
So it won't cause backup?
No, these are on a relatively heavy grade. This is not flat. Even the watershed here has a good deal of slope. Not the watershed, I'm sorry. The wetland has a good deal of slope. It's not a flat area. It's on a hillside.
Yeah, I went by it.
You
but
see that?
Yeah, but it's very heavily wooded,
Yeah,
so it's hard to.
You can't see it now, yeah. But when you drive up Penfield, Stephen Tom Road, and you drive up here and you look up the hill, you can see the kind of slope that you see behind those houses is that same slope, but it continues much further to the back of that property. And I said, the construction of the houses in the subdivision will not impede any of that. Has to deal with that water running across it, but it doesn't impede it.
Okay, any further
Actually-
questions on this sheet?
I probably should get into this discussion. This is probably the best time to talk about stormwater and the stormwater analysis. Because of the amount of activity in this watershed with the 6 lots, the driveways, and all that activity, a stormwater detention basin was required to be placed. And that basin is placed right in the corner of lot number 6, which is right in this corner here. All this water is basically collected and discharged down those driveways into a pair of basins, which then discharge into that detention basin, which is right here. I'll have another drawing on the site plan that shows that in detail. But basically, the analysis takes this whole watershed, takes all the developed area, including the offsite area, and runs it through analysis to determine what the peak runoff rates are for the various rainfall events. There's a existing condition, which basically is what's there now, and then there's a developed condition. The detention basin is designed to such that it retains enough of water and flow that the total watershed currently and after development will not exceed the discharge at that culvert under Stephen Tom Road. The analysis matches very closely the pre-development discharge rates for this whole watershed, which is a part of your regulatory requirements.
But whatever washes down the driveway is going to go into this detention and then directly into the wetlands.
That's correct. That detail I can show you on another sheet, but you can see I'm showing you this overall watershed condition, so you see what's involved. You can't see it on the site plans because the site plan scale's much different. All right, Philip, that single drawing. Okay. This is sheet 3. This is one of the 3 pages with the actual site plan on it. What is shown here, again, here's the corner of Penfield and Stephen Tom right here. Stephen Tom comes up over the top and just keeps going in this direction. The lot with the house on it is this large rectangle right here. Lots 1 and 2, which all are part of the watershed for Penfield Hill. These lots on this side are basically all diverted through this area, collected and diverted, and here's that detention basin that I'm referring to. These gray areas are the 2 driveways for the interior lots. and they're paved because of slope requirements. So all that water that gets onto these two driveways is directed and caught by a pair of catch basins at the bottom of the driveway, and those basins then direct the flow into this basin. The basin has essentially two outlets. The standard outlet is a concrete riser that basically has an open top on it, which acts as the primary spillway. But within that, the side walls of that spillway are ports that are different sizes and different elevations. They're basically designed to control the rate of discharge that goes out of that riser, so that you can match, the peak outlets to each of the storms. That riser has a 12-inch pipe going out of it, which then discharges into the edge of the wetland. There's a riprap level up spreader at the outlet of that pipe, and it's located right here. And that is the primary outlet for all the water going through that basin. Design requirements, promulgated by the state and engineering practice, is you also have to have an emergency spillway. In the event that something happens that clogs that primary structure, that riser and that outlet pipe, you need to be able to protect the integrity of the structure, the berms, from being overtopped. So you're required to put in what they call an emergency spillway. That's in the form of a riprap spillway in the opposite corner of the basin, located right here. That was one of the changes that the town engineer requested, that spillway be moved to the far end of the basin, where the basin is actually cut into existing grade, whereas on the opposite end, the berm is in a fill. He indicated it's much better to have that spillway located in a cut in existing ground rather than in a fill.
And that's right up against the wetlands, right? Am I
Yes.
reading that correctly?
If you're looking at the screen hatch, that wetland line is right there. Yes. Doesn't go into the wetland, but it is right alongside it. Yes.
And just another question, the lots 7 and 8 are not pictured on that.
No,
correct?
no. It said because of the scale,
Right.
there's 3 sheets that cover this whole subdivision.
So, if this land is built on, will, the water that sheets over it will increase in volume, because there's, it's gonna be grass with.
It's part of the
berms.
development, yes.
Yeah, so the volume going into the wetlands in general will increase from the subdivision,
No, not based on the design for that detention basin. The purpose of the detention basin is to offset that increase in flow.
But the detention basin's on the other side, for the other
Yes,
ones.
right. It takes the majority of the developed flow. I mean, lot 7 and 8 are on the other side of the wetland, so they're not
Right.
really directly involved in the basin. The basin's designed to be large enough and retain enough water that it offsets the additional runoff from the other side and the opposite side of the wetland. Yes. So like I said, that's why I showed you that watershed map. That entire watershed, all that water, including the developed areas, is all funneled and discharged to the culvert in the road, but that detention basin discharge is part of that. And that retains enough of flow and enough of water that the total watershed will not exceed what is passing through that road culvert in an undeveloped condition. Even though the 2 lots on the other side don't have a direct discharge to the basin. The basin's sized enough that it offsets that additional flow.
From the
From
opposite
7 and 8,
side.
yes, yeah. Plus, I should also mention, in addition to the detention basin, all the houses in each of the lots has to have a subsurface infiltration system for the roof water. So that the roof water tends to be a large part of the impervious surface for these types of development. That offsets part of the flow. It's not incorporated into the design. The design is relatively conservative, But on top of that detention basin, you also have small detention galleries for each rooftop in each of the lots. That is also a standard practice in the state DEP regulations.
Is that part of the lead requirements?
No, it's part of the state stormwater quality management.
Can you just explain what happens to the roof runoff? I'm just curious, what's
It's,
the,
they pipe the downspouts are piped and collected, and they discharge to a small system, typically the same type of structures that your septic system trenches might be, only it's not a septic system, it's just taking roof water. And it's designed to store and infiltrate basically 2 inches of rainfall coming off of that roof.
so it's a tank?
No, it's actually an infiltration structure. It's a leaching trench, basically.
There's no structure, there's just pipes?
No, it is a, well, I said, if you know what a leaching trench looks like, these I don't know, plastic
Like tubes
fiberglass.
with holes in 'em.
Yeah, they look like dog houses.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're hollow, so they have a lot of air in them, a lot of volume. And that volume is used to store that volume of rainfall water coming off the roof.
So it's just the tubes, there's no tank, just the tubes?
No, there's no tank, because it's not pollution, it's just roof water. It's not like a septic system where you have to treat the outlet. And that water infiltrates into the ground. So each time you get a storm, regardless of the size of the storm, that roof water goes into that system.
And those tubes just end at some point? They just end, and the water never comes shooting out at the
No.
end of the tube? It's
No,
just all
it's a
underground.
buried trench structure, and it's buried in the ground. No, there's no overflow outlet type of thing, no.
And they're able to handle, like a huge downpour?
No, they are designed to handle what they call a first flush flow, which is the 2-year storm. Any pollutants in that are on the roof are washed off initially in that first rainfall, that are washed then into that gallery system. After that, with the heavier storms, you get a lot more volume, but the volume is cleaner because you've now flushed and washed off the roof with that initial rain.
So where does that rain go?
And into that gallery system. Again, it will overwhelm that system eventually, because when you get into the bigger storms, this little gallery system is not designed to accommodate large storms. That water will just come out of the pipe to the downspouts, for whatever storm it is. They would have to be larger storms than a.
Well, I mean, for example, the downpour we had, I don't know, a week or so ago,
Yes.
we have pipes that go into the ground and stuff, and it gets filled up fast, and so it overflows
Mhm.
on top. And it's
Yeah, I
not
don't know
like
what
the
system
pipe-
you have there.
Yeah, I'm just saying, well, I'm asking,
It-
because obviously mine is very old. I'm just asking, that's why I asked you about the volume, because, how much is gonna be overflow how much can those pipes handle? What kind of volume can they handle?
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're not pipes. They're actually a leaching structure in the ground. They're a structure that's 3 feet wide.
But they back up.
It will, yes. Once you reach a capacity, greater storms, they will fill up, and that pipe will back up to where the downspouts go into the ground. Then they will then come out of the downspouts.
Yeah.
They're not designed as a major stormwater retention. They're designed to treat the runoff coming off the roof, and that occurs in the initial runoff, the initial first 2 inches of runoff coming off the roof, whether it's a small storm or a very large storm. So it's designed to take all of that initial runoff into that gallery system. After that, whatever happens, that's
Well, it
clean.
can
That's clean water.
It could potentially cause pooling of water next to the house because it's backing up.
Not if the house is graded properly. The building code requires you to grade away from the house for everything around it.
Yeah.
That would run off like if you just had normal downspouts going out onto the ground at that point.
So what kind of storm would it take for it to actually back up like
I said, they call it a 2-year storm. It's a 2-inch, actually a 2-inch depth of rainfall that falls on the roof. That's what it's designed to accommodate.
The system of it, like what she was kind of asking about, it backing up to the house, like how much would it bring, how big of a rainstorm? Like would it be a 50-year, 100-year storm?
It's more than a 2-year storm, yeah.
It happens all the time, basically.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah. I said, at that point, it's the same as having, you know, just downspouts with just an outlet out onto the ground at that point. I said the infiltration structure is basically designed to treat whatever comes off that roof initially, whatever pollutant might be on that roof. And it's also, because it's, you know, it's an impervious surface, I mean, anything that falls on that needs to be treated or somehow contained. It's infiltrated into the ground, although, I mean, there's not a lot of pollution coming off the roof, but there is still some.
So is there anything that treats the pollution that comes off of the driveways or the lawns, let's say people that, you know?
The driveways, yes, in this area here, anything going through this detention basin is essentially treated. It's stored, it's, you know, floatables are removed. It's an infiltration structure. They have what's called a forebay that takes out, will eliminate sediment from getting out of the structure, from flowing out into the wetland. So there's a lot of treatment that goes on in those basements, in those basins. They call them water quality basins too, both detention and water quality.
How do are they manned? Like you have to, how are they maintained?
They do have to be maintained. At some point, you know, seasonally they have to be checked. One of the things, the biggest operation is, you know, when the woody vegetation starts to grow in the sides or in the embankments, that material, those need to be cut or removed before they grow up into trees, because once they get into trees, they endanger the embankments.
So is that a homeowner responsibility or is that a town responsibility?
No, it's not a town responsibility. It is the development's responsibility. Because this sits entirely on this lot, there could be a homeowners association, or it could be just a condition of this property owner to require to do that maintenance, since it sits on his property. There's not a lot to the maintenance, because I said that the basin is kind of self-functioning. Again, it's things like growth, woody growth coming in and going into the basin. Once the project is completed and the site is stabilized, there should be almost no sediment coming from anywhere, other than maybe, you know, somebody's doing sanding on the driveway. That's a very small volume coming into this large basin. At some point, well into the future, you might have to clean some of that sediment, remove it from the basin.
About like salt and,
Sand, primarily.
So
it wouldn't be-
if someone salts their driveway, it's just gonna end up in there and then in the wetlands.
Well, it does go. Does go through here, yes, and it goes out. Eventually, goes out into the. Yes, the discharge, I should mention, is in the wetland, but it's right here, right next to the road. So there's almost no wetland impacted by that discharge. It's so close to the road.
And then where does it go then?
That whole wetland collects all the watershed that I showed you.
Yeah.
And it discharges it through this. There's an 18-inch culvert right here that everything goes through that.
And then where does that go?
It goes north to the property. There's a small brook on the other side of the road that continues north. I'm not sure how far it was.
So it goes into a brook.
It goes into a wetland, which is on the other side of the road. At one time, probably before this road Stephen Tom was built, that wetland and whatever was contiguous all the way across the road. When they built the road, they filled over that part of a wetland. So on either side of the road is still what originally was there. Yeah, there's a very large wetland and a small brook that goes north through 2 lots on the north side of that.
Are there any concerns about water eventually getting on the road and causing
Well, there is that because the culverts, the 18-inch culverts, have a limited capacity. Yes, that condition would happen now, you know, under extreme rainfall events, and it will continue. Basically, because we're not discharging any more water to that culvert than what discharges there now, we're not impacting anything. The one improvement that I did propose here, because I found a deficiency, the culvert under the road is 18-inch concrete, but the inlet pipe to those culverts is only 15-inch. So that 15-inch pipe acts as a restriction to the rest of the culvert. So what I'm showing is that pipe would be removed and a larger pipe put in its place, just to basically take advantage of the volume in the culvert. That was also would help reduce the amount and frequency of anything going over the road.
Doesn't developing the land itself create more flow of water over it rather than absorption into it?
Normally, yes, that's true.
So it will increase the amount of water flowing into the wetland and going across.
Not the peak flow. The peak flow is being controlled by that detention basin. But locally isolated areas, yes, that's true, yeah, on some individual lots. But overall, for that entire watershed, the detention basin controls enough of discharge that at that culvert under the road, the flows don't exceed what currently goes through that now.
But some things that are coming from the other side are going to impact it. I mean, I guess we can argue that. I mean, we know that because of the increase in impervious surfaces and because of basically you have less area to absorb whatever water is coming down. Overall, there is an increase to the amount of water that's going to be running around.
Yes.
I understand that that's what that thing is to address. But on the other side, what's addressing that? I mean, you're going to have a roof and driveways on the other side.
Right. The roof is taken care of. The driveways basically sheet flow into the woods, and eventually end up down into that wetland. And the water coming off those two lots 7 and 8 you're looking at, that area is quite small compared to that off-site watershed that flows across those properties. So the majority of the flow is not being generated by the lots. It's being generated by the off-site watershed.
But what ends up in the wetlands has to flow over those lots.
Eventually, yes. Eventually, everything ends up in the wetland eventually.
Yeah.
Both up from on the site and off the site. This is sheet 4, and this is the southern portion of the subdivision, and it's basically there's Penfield Hill Road there. The rear of the subdivision is here. Here's the land for the land trust. Lot 2 is mostly here. Lots 4, 5, and then this edge of the wetland. That's basically the developed area of these lots is what you see mostly in this this depiction. It ends, that large wetland, it ends here. Lot 7 and 8 is the next sheet over. And what you see on here is, you see the two houses, you see the septic systems. We have, the red line is the 100-foot regulated area for the wetlands purposes, but we also have all the conservation easement areas shown on this plan as well as on that survey map, that records subdivision map. Also had all the conservation areas on it. We're basically including all, this entire wetland band. This other wetland plus part of the upland area are in those conservation easements. I'd have to go back to the subdivision map to show you that all in one drawing. The areas, I forget the area, but the surveyor's map depicts it's 25% of the total subdivision. Subdivision's 18 acres.
Okay. That was another thing that I wanted to ask.
Sorry.
We didn't get a little summary of what the, you know, I know it's here somewhere, but
It's on that.
like
It's
this
on that.
big.
It's on the surveyor sheet.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
So it was, I'm sorry, can you just give me what the stats are? I would like to know.
18 acres.
18 acres in total?
Yes.
Okay, and then what's the wetland area?
I would have to look. I can't see that on this drawing here.
I had 2.9 plus on one of the things, and then another like 0.7.
All right. I have to look. This is the record subdivision map here.
Right.
He shows the area of the conservation easements on here.
0.7.
I'd have to find out that's not the area of the wetland. The wetlands are smaller. This was done for the Wetlands Commission. I'm not sure if I have it on.
Yeah.
It says total area, .2.
Oh, conservation, well, this,
He's showing the area of the conservation easements, not the wetlands there. The wetlands are within the conservation easements. Unless there's a small note, which I
oh,
don't
it
see.
can't get any smaller than this.
You know,
It says
well,
It
yes.
says total area, wetlands, 0.226.
So one says
Yeesh.
.226 and one says 2.921.
2.9, right, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so those are just the wetlands,
That's just the-
226 and 2, okay, so we're talking less than 3.5 acres of wetlands.
Right. And the conservation.
Of just wetlands, and then the conservation easement is what?
Okay, on the smaller one here by Penfield, this is .7 acres for this. See the area in gray and
Right,
outlined here?
right,
That's
right.
the conservation easement. The green is the wetland inside that.
Okay,
That's .7. And the larger one, the conservation area is 3.844.
okay, all right, so that's,
And you see the green is the wetland contained within
okay,
that.
so that's 4.5. The conservation easement is 4.5 acres.
All right?
The wetlands is 3.5 of the 4.5.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Just over 3.
What's that?
Just over 3.
Just over 3. Okay, I'll make it 3.2.
Yeah, the survey map did a calculation for the percentage of the conservation easement. It's 24.8% of the overall 18-acre parcel.
24.8%.
I think your regulations say 20.
That includes the wetlands.
Yes, yes. What you'll see on the surveyor's map here, you see I highlighted the wetlands in green. See these gray shadow areas? Those are the non-wetland areas in those conservation easements.
Right.
I think he did show that, I think, on his drawing, but the wetland boundary was a little hard to see without coloring it.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Frank, I'm sorry, could you go back to the map with the detention basin? Just the one for a minute. So the gravel is not on the conservation easement, correct?
No, there's none of this is in that conservation easement. Conservation easement on this side is the property line. And this basin is entirely within the property line of lot number 6.
Thank you.
Again, this is and back to sheet 4, corner at Penfield Hill Road, the rear corner of the site, and then this is, the land trust property is right here. The match to this, to the rest of the other sheet on the subdivision is to the right here. That's lot 7 and 8 on the other side of the wetland. As you can see, the development in that, the lots are relatively large compared to the amount of developed area. House and septic system and driveways, and there's a lot of area associated with these lots that are not to be developed. Most of the lots are more than the minimum required by your regulations. If you look on one of the sheets here in my notes, we are required to do the density calculation. The density calculation says I can have 10 acres, 10 lots on this subdivision. Again, this drawing was of more interest to the Wetlands Commission because of the two wetlands in that 100-foot regulated area, which is this red line. As part of some of the notes from Jeff Jacobson's letter, we had a couple of minor intrusions. This was on the wetland side into that 100-foot area, which have all been removed and backed out of that. So there's no physical or construction intrusions, other than when you get down to that detention basin and the driveway for lot 7 are the only two things that still fall within that 100-foot area. And it's a regulated area, it's not a buffer.
Where is the dwelling on lot 5?
Right here. It's on this sheet. Not on the first sheet. The lot is so large it'll split between the two sheets.
Oh, so it's this right?
No,
No,
it
that says
said
lot.
on this sheet here. Go to the next sheet. It said those two lots are very large.
Yeah.
Lot 3 and house and lot 4 and house on.
Carolyn, just so you know, these are just spec houses. Each of these houses are just showing that it's viable.
Yeah,
To put a house?
I didn't see one on that.
Okay,
I
okay.
just didn't see one on
Right.
that one.
Yeah, it's on the other sheet.
Figure out where it was.
Okay.
Yes, that's this sheet here. The houses and the septic systems are on this drawing because they're further to the rear of the lots.
Did you say something about lot 7?
Lot 7 and 8 are the next sheet over.
Okay, so we're gonna get there.
Yeah. All right, this is sheet 5. Okay, yes. This shows lot 7 and 8 and the eastern side of that large wetland. Most of this drawing shows to the right of the drawing is the off-site area from the site. Lot 8 is in the front. Lot 7 is here. Here's that green shaded wetland area here. That wetland is basically contained outside of the lot areas. Is both the wetland and the conservation easement are not on either of those lots.
What is the red line?
This red line, this was for wetlands. That's their 100-foot regulated area from the wetlands.
And what is that? Is that the driveway that's inside the
Yes.
regulated area?
This is the only other thing besides the detention basin that's inside that 100-foot regulated area. Yes. And you can see it runs right along the edge of that area. This is all wooded area here, and then this is the wetland.
So the driveway for lot 7 would be inside
Yes.
the 100-foot.
Yes. Again, Steve and Tom Road is at the top. And the original plan that I had two separate driveways for the lots. But then I realized that there's a drainage swale that comes down Steve and Tom Road across this frontage, which required culverts. So what I did is I redesigned the lot 8, and you'll see here the two gray areas come to a common curb cut, which is also a common culvert for both driveways.
And why would they not have a shared driveway so that you could avoid the 100 feet?
Because there's not enough room to come onto this lot here with another driveway. To run the driveway right past the house here would not be acceptable to most homeowners. This has the ability to be squeezed over a little bit. As you can see, it's on the edge, and then slightly it changes direction. But again, the wetland commission had looked at that, and so did the town engineer, and he didn't see any issue. He did ask for more erosion control measures along that driveway, just given the fact of its length and its closeness to the wetland. The contour here is when you drive in where this curb cut is, you're driving in like a relatively flat plateau in the contour, all the way straight back to almost back to here, to almost to the wetland. But once you get, you go to the west a little bit, the plateau runs and then it drops down to the wetland. But all the construction, the driveway, everything is located up on that plateau, which makes the construction and any issues with runoff and erosion significantly reduced by not having to do cuts and fills. You probably can't see the contours too well on those maps. I do have a full-size set. I don't know if Dan has one too. If you want to, you need to look at the detail up close where you can really see it on a different scale. As part of these site plans, I hadn't pointed them out. As part of your regulations, all the driveways show the available sight lines, for the curb cuts, and they all meet the minimum requirement for residential driveways. I believe lot 1 there on Steve and Tom Road requires a little bit of tree clearing along the front of the property to create that sight line. But all the other driveways are along a relatively straight section of road, so your sight line there is already rather long.
So the town engineer's letter indicates that lot 7 does not meet the minimum square requirement?
That's a discussion we're having with staff. I don't know how long the members of this commission have been on here, but I've done a number of subdivisions over the years in town here where the minimum rectangle basically is applied to the front building setback line, and it makes no reference as to where that front building setback line had to be. This lot here, even though it has the legal frontage for a front lot, we have to go further back in the lot to get to the point where we meet the minimum width and minimum depth criteria, and that is where the rectangle is applied, because that is where the building setback line for this lot is back there, and that has been like that for quite a few years. That's where the rectangle is applied. In your definition, it simply says the rectangle must intrude into the front building setback.
I did drive by the property, and I just don't remember whether there were stone walls in the front. Is there a stone wall along the border? No.
There's no stone walls
Frank, speaking in the mic.
Oh, sorry. No, along the road, no. There are stone walls. Let me go back to the surveyors. There are stone walls along the perimeter of the property, on the sides, not in the, there it is. There are pieces of a stone wall. This is the rear of the property here.
Yeah, I see
There are
it.
sections of stone wall there, although it's not a complete line. It's broken up pretty badly. I walked that back line and I had a hard time finding those rear points because the stone walls they're pushed down and they're very, very hard to see. And they're not continuous. The other stone wall is along the lot number 8. That's the stone wall that runs, I think, most of the length of that eastern side of the subdivision. So neither of those walls can be disturbed because I believe they're shared property lines with the neighbors. And none of the construction activity is related to either of those property lines. With that last site plan for lot 7 and 8, the remaining 2 sheets, actually 3, 6, 7, and 8, are all soil test data, details, and notes, schedules for erosion and sedimentation control notes. Sheet 6, that entire drawing is soil test data that you see there. Sheet 7 also has some septic system design information, but it also has the percolation tests on that. And all the narratives in that are all part of your erosion sedimentation control requirements. It also identifies when we contacted DEP for their database for species of concern or that. They identified the potential for, of course, this whole part of town is always tagged as rattlesnake country. And there is the eastern box turtle, which is showing up almost everywhere. And there's a whippoorwill that is thought to be in the area. There was also another species in this general area. When you look at those maps, they're not site-specific. They're very, very large blobs that cover large areas, and they're not specific to any site. They did mention another species that needed water, marsh water, standing water, as part of its habitat, and there is that does not exist on the in these wetlands. Our wetlands are on a hillside. I suspect the property to the rear in the land trust definitely has that kind of habitat, and I suspect that's probably where that notification's coming in from. So those notes are placed on the drawings as an alert to the future homeowners and the developers as well. I think there's also a rattlesnake note on the surveyor's map was asked to be put on there.
Kind of limits construction to August, September, October. Between the
certain types of clearing in that, yes, yeah. Between the box turtle, the rattlesnakes, I don't think are an issue. I've walked the property quite a bit. I don't know if anyone's ever seen rattlesnakes out there, but you don't see the kind of rock outcrop and rock habitat that the rattlesnakes normally do. Box turtles, yeah, you find box turtles everywhere now. I'm not sure about the whippoorwill if that's even on the property, but again, it's been identified for the general area. The mapping, the DEP mapping is never site specific. And the last sheet is all engineering details.
What was that?
Engineering details, construction details. And I have it upside down, but that one's all right. Oh, you can't see this one behind me. Various details, erosion control, the infamous curtain drain that the town sanitarian's been looking for. There's the detail for the detention basin and its outlet structures and everything related to that. Erosion control, erosion control, erosion control, all of this stuff. A driveway, culvert, cross sections for paving the driveways, and there's that roof water storm infiltration structure, and of course a standard pair of catch basins. And with that, if the commission has any other questions?
Questions for Frank from commission members?
I should, maybe before we get into questions, we do have, you must have this in your package. We had an approval letter from Chatham Health District dated October 13th. He had 3 minor items that he wanted to included in the Mylars for the project. Those items have been included and added to the drawing that's in front of you. You might not be able to see them because they're relatively minor, but they have been incorporated into the plans that are of record now. He did give a total approval of the whole subdivision lots for sewage disposal and that, but he had a couple minor requests. And of course, I think you all know, wetlands closed their public hearing Tuesday, but they have not rendered a decision, which is going to require this hearing to be tabled until your first December meeting.
It'll be the second meeting in December.
Second meeting?
Yep.
Okay. Not the first? I thought it would...
Just the way that December 1st comes out is a Thursday. So wetlands will meet the following week.
Following week.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Yes, that's true. It's usually the other way around, but not in December.
Right.
Okay. So you will need a request for extension to get past the December 1st meeting.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Further questions by commission members? Questions or comments from members of the public? Anyone wishing to speak, please approach the podium and identify yourself.
Yeah, and if I could just ask if you guys have questions that you'd like answered, to direct them towards the commission, and then the commission can ask the applicant to come forward and answer them for you.
Frank, can you take easel down? Thank you.
Yeah, at some point I'll need to look between.
The letter that you gave us tonight.
They're following. John LaShane, South Road in Portland. I've been a Portland rep for the Meshomassic, I don't know who I am, Middlesex Land Trust for 30 years. And Middlesex Land Trust has had a 35-year history of land preservation in northern Middlesex County. In Portland, we own 17 preserves totaling 392 acres. In your packets, did you have a picture, a map that showed the 2 preserves on it? Dan, did you give that to them? I know you may have done it for the conservation.
Yeah, I'm not sure since you didn't submit it for planning and zoning.
Well, I can just describe it. Like Frank said, there's a 18-acre piece called the Stewart Hill Brook Preserve that abuts this property. There's another 27 acres that's on the other side of the road called Cedar Meadow Preserve. So the 2 preserves are actually very close. They either abut or in close proximity to this project. the application shows no open space dedication. I'm a little surprised at that because with the land trust having two preserves so close to this, I would have thought that that would have been a consideration to have a open space dedication. I know that what is being done in substitution for that is to have conservation easements. It's the opinion of the land trust that that is not sufficient to protect wetlands or the land. I know that Portland has a 20% set aside that they could use for that purpose. There's a few things that the Middlesex Land Trust was looking for. First of all, we want to make sure that the wetlands are protected. We want to preserve the wildlife corridor along the brook that would go, I call it Stewart Hill Brook. I don't think it's got a name other than that. But that's the logical place. There should be a wildlife corridor to connect this property with the property across the street. The other thing is to create a recreational connector. With an 18-acre preserve on one side and a 27-acre preserve on the other side, it would be fantastic if we could have a open space corridor for a trail, not just for wildlife, but for a trail as well. It seems like a no-brainer to see the two so close together and not have a connection to each other. One of the problems with conservation easement is that the town does not routinely check for problems. I talked to Jim Sipperly, and he said basically they never go out and look at conservation easements to see if they're being honored. The only way that it happens would be if a neighbor was to see activity going on a conservation easement area, and they would call the town and ask for somebody to come out and deal with it. But if the town is giving the easement, and if they won't come out and do it, then who does? And it's my opinion that the conservation easement, instead of being a conservation easement, should be a set aside. That if it goes to the land trust is diligent about checking their properties. Every year, and there's people on the board that can verify this, every year we go out and we check all our properties, or at least the ones that definitely have concerns. And we check the boundaries, we put up the boundary markers. If the markers have fallen off, we put them on, and we make sure that the wetland, open space is not being violated. That's the whole point of it. I don't want to sound negative. Humans are humans. If you own a piece of property, and by the way, you know that the conservation easement land is not owned by the town. It's owned by the owner of the property. And one of the things I wanted to say is those lots are large. One of the lots is very large because it contains the wetland, and the wetland can't be built on. So he's getting the credit for having this big acreage, but it's really not a feasible use for housing because it's wetland. And the land trust would like to own the property, own the wetland, and own the upland that surrounds it. When I look at the map that he shows, and I don't know whether that can be shown up there, it's the one that shows the wetland and the conservation easements around it. You've all seen that. There it is right there. The confusing thing for me is that we see here and here and here that there's a significant conservation easement, land under conservation easement. Then you go up here, and it's very thin. You go over here, it's non-existent. And the question is why? And the answer, in my opinion, is it has to be that thin because you gotta get the houses in there. You gotta fit the houses in. Frank said that because of the number of lots surrounding that wetland, that they needed a detention basin. They had to take alternative measures to make sure that the wetland was protected. My problem is that you don't have to have 6 lots. You'd like to have 6 lots, because 6 lots would put more money in your pocket. But if the land, in order to preserve the wetland feature, if you need to have less lots, then maybe that's what you need to do. And it was pointed out that the driveway is in the 100-foot regulated area. Part of it is in, which seems kind of funny because the whole idea of a 100-foot regulated area is to offer a buffer, basically, to the wetland, to make sure that anything that's going on there can't just go right quickly into the wetland. So I would request that the wetland be protected totally with a 100-foot wide buffer that the land trust would own. That's the best way to protect if you really want to protect that wetland, that's what you need to do. The problem also with conservation easements is you mark them with tags, okay, those round tags. If anybody knows, if anybody here is a hiker, I don't know of anybody in particular, but tags love to come off of trees because trees grow. And when the tree grows, the tags fall off. So if you if you've got a house and you've got the tags up there, you know that that property is conservation easement, you can't touch it. You have to leave it alone. But then the tags fall off and then you sell the house and somebody else gets the property. Do you think they even know that they have a conservation easement? Chances are they won't. Or if they do they know that they have to protect it from being disturbed? The 100-foot regulated area almost seems like a substitute for where it's too narrow to fit in the conservation easement line because you've got the 2 driveways going up. It seems like that's supposed to be the substitution to protect the land. But then I'm told that they can do a lot of things in a regulated area that is not normally, you wouldn't think you'd normally be able to do. I know you can't remove material, and I know you can't add material to a 100-foot regulated area. But maybe Dan, or maybe somebody can tell me, can you have a lawn in a 100-foot regulated area?
Okay, so, if the commission doesn't mind. So the 100-foot regulated area, you can do development, but it requires an inland wetlands permit. That's what is standard across the board. Anyone who wants to do something in the 100-foot regulated area provides an inland wetland application. It's the Inland Wetlands Commission's job and the Inland Wetlands Enforcement Agent's job to determine whether that disturbance or activity in the upland review area will negatively impact the wetland. So currently, this is an inland wetlands. They're making the determination right now whether the encroachments into the upland review area will negatively impact the wetland. So it's really not, as much as you need to take in stormwater considerations and things of that nature into your decision, the viability and health of the wetland is in the purview of the Inland Wetlands Commission. So they are considering whether the driveway encroachment and the detention basin will negatively impact the wetland along with the rest of the potential development as shown in the site plan and application. So they are kind of the arbiters of that. That's more of their purview. It's a little bit outside of yours. Does that make sense to you guys?
When I spoke to inland wetlands, of course, I kept bumping into the two get so intermeshed that it's sometimes very difficult to keep them separate. Like, for instance, if you were to put pesticides and fertilizers on the lawn, is that an inland wetland concern?
So that's something that could potentially be addressed by inland wetlands, yes.
For
Okay.
us, we've done that before.
Yes, for Oakwood, I know that has been, but that was more in line with the Aquifer Protection Zone, which is your purview. So you guys are the Aquifer Protection Agency. You regulate the aquifer protection areas in town. So that's something certainly to consider. Now, you do have latitude in your decision-making, as this is a special permit, but certainly I would hold off on some considerations until we see whether this application makes it through wetlands or not. But again, any time in any lot for any property in the town of Portland, anything within the 100-foot upland review area requires an inland wetlands application and review. Each of these houses, when they're built, any clearing or construction will have to go back through in the wetlands. You know, these are spec houses. These are spec clearing areas. It's just to show that a house is viable on the lot, but some of these houses will have to go back through inland wetlands, depending on what they do.
So, Dan, can I assume then that until they go to inland wetlands, they can't do anything in that 100-foot area? Nothing at all?
Correct.
Okay.
So I have a question, Dan.
Well, okay, so let me just, you can do minor maintenance. So you can, say, maintain small vegetation under a small caliper. Certainly nothing large, probably bigger than my thumb in terms of caliper for bushes, but you could do some maintenance. But again, you know, if you wanted to cut down a tree or do clearing, we would have you speak with our inland wetlands agent, Jim Sipperly. Sorry, Carolyn, what were you saying?
This is kind of along the same track, but I'm wondering, who makes the decision on whether or not it's open space versus an easement, a conservation easement?
So,
I know we can require you know, we have requirements for open space, and I know that's under us, but who makes that determination up front?
so the application is going before the Conservation Commission meeting next week.
Okay, that was.
They will make a recommendation. It's only a recommendation. You guys are the final determinant of that. One thing I'm going to do for some of my homework for me is to clarify the statutory requirements as to whether it's just an easements requirement, which I believe is all that's required. I don't believe they have to donate the land to the Middlesex Land Trust. It could be a different land trust that could be the holder of that property. But that's something that I'm going to make sure that I get you a concrete answer on.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a funny response.
How so?
Portland is part of a six town land trust in northern Middlesex County. And I've never seen another land trust want to come in to our jurisdiction and I mean, I wouldn't mind if the landowner would prefer another land trust, that's fine, but.
Yeah, so there's no statutory requirement that I'm aware of that requires land going to a certain land trust. I certainly understand, you know, your agency has been active in northern Middlesex County for a long time.
Well, it'd be a professional courtesy that they would come to us and say, we've been approached.
Well, I'm just giving them the answer. I can't tell them that they have to give you the land.
In my mind, it's pretty far-fetched that situation would come up. I mean.
All I'm giving them is
Yeah, okay.
is what I believe to be a fact.
So, I mean, if we did if we found a violation on a property, the first thing we do is we go to the landowner and we say, we got a violation. And I'm talking about if we own the property. If we owned it, then we would be checking with the landowner first. And then what we've done in the past, and we've got, like I said, a 35-year history, we've got a lawyer that takes care of any business where if a landowner refuses to stop the activity that he's doing, then we have taken legal action, so.
I just want to clarify for the board, if somebody's doing illegal activity in the upland review area without permits, we would have the inland wetlands agent go out and do an enforcement action. And if the Inland Wetlands Commission, who the enforcement action would go to, determined that there is an issue there, there would be most likely a requirement for them to do a restoration plan. Now, if the homeowner refused to do that restoration plan, the town would seek legal action as
How
well.
would you find out about it?
Typically,
You're saying you would take action and you.
typically we operate off complaints, but if it's brought to the town attention,
Right.
we would then act.
By a neighbor or something like that?
Generally, yes.
Okay, yeah, because I think about a 400-foot driveway and how unlikely it would be for somebody to even know that there was an unregulated activity going on. I mean, you know, and I think if I was a neighbor, I would feel a little put upon that I had to be the enforcement agent to bring it to the town's attention that this activity was going on.
I would say you would be surprised by the number of complaints that we get.
I get, well, that's great. Then that reassures me.
Yes, so, yeah, I wouldn't worry, trust me. It's,
So,
people are pretty interested what their neighbors are doing.
not you live where I live.
Okay, back on topic.
All right, basically, that's all I had. I'm just concerned about the stuff that can go on legally on the property, on the lawn, and then that material, whatever it may be, pesticides, herbicides, or fertilizers, ends up in the brook or in the wetland. So I really would like to know how that's prevented. Anyway,
I have a question.
okay, thank you.
Yes,
Hold on one sec.
Before you leave, John, we have a question?
I have a question. When you first came to the podium, you said that there were two parcels that were adjacent or that abutted this
The land
proposed.
trust.
And I'm just wondering if you could tell me, or, show us on, I think it's the first page of that map where they are
Good.
and what they are, so I can understand
I
that.
had this beautiful, unfortunately, I couldn't find my folder, and I had this beautiful map that showed the two land trust properties and this property and several others. So this is very-
Excuse
Kind
me,
of wanna
Dan.
know
Can
where
we
they
have
are.
Can we have that map from John, when we
Sure.
pick this up again?
Yeah.
Can we have-
Yeah, I can
so
distribute that to
we
you
should
guys.
have that.
Frank Magnot again. This line here is basically the rear of the parcel. Again, Penfield Hill and Steve and Tom Road. And this is, most of this area is the land trust area. It does not extend out to Penfield Hill Road here, but it does on the other side of the street. It abuts this area here.
It's right here,
It's right opposite this,
Yeah.
this corner.
and it actually goes beyond the power line. There's a power line that goes right to this, and then on the other side is more, but there is a major piece right here.
And what is that piece called?
Cedar Meadows Preserve. Bob Cuskey, when he was a little kid, remembers the trees being real small, and Bob's about 70 years old. He's ancient.
Hey,
And,
watch it there.
I know, we resemble that much. But he remembers when the trees were a little big. So the cedars are probably 70, 80 years old, and it's all in a big meadow, and he mows it religiously. And he's mowed a little trail through it, so anytime you want to take a nice walk in the cedars, it's a great place to go.
And where is the other piece?
And the other piece is right here.
And what
It's
is,
18 acres in size, and it abuts the southern side of the development of the project area.
and
Yeah.
what is that called?
And that's called Stewart Hill Brook Reserve.
Thank you.
That does extend up to Stewart Hill, doesn't it? Does it front? Doesn't front?
Comes out, we got a 20-foot right of way that goes out to Chatham Hollow
Oh,
Road.
Chatham Hollow, okay.
Okay, did that answer your
Yes,
question?
thank you, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for John? Other members of the public who might like to speak?
Sebastian Mazzata, Stephentown Road. My property butts lot 7 and 8. I've been there for 22 years now, and full year. I'm sorry, 22 years, and where my house is, I have a 400-foot driveway, and I had to put in a curtain drain along the whole driveway, 6-inch pipe down to the road, because of the numerous amount of water in the spring that comes from my 2 neighbors up the hill from me. So the wetlands that these 8 lots are going in, everything designed is for that area. Nothing that is upstream for it, that's coming down into that area. Behind this, there is another 20 acres, and just went up for sale, actually 15 of it, and the home. That's a possible building lots that can be cleared, and it's going to be more of a runoff into this area. So what is being taken care of is, like I said, only for those 8 lots. That driveway that's in the wetlands part, that's that 100-foot boundary, that is 400 feet long, paved, 12 feet wide. That's a lot of extra water that is going to be just flowing. And the other driveway, I believe, is 200 feet. And I don't understand in the wetlands area how you can even ask to put a driveway in that's supposed to be protecting the wetlands, where if you're going to share a driveway, fine, or eliminate the lot instead of trying to push the limits on squeezing all these lots in there. You have another lot on the other side of the wetlands of me, near the road, that is ledge that needs to be blasted. So now you're blasting near wetlands, opening up space, whatever happens underneath the ground in that area, who knows? You got basements, septics, wells, all in that one area with everything running off. Everyone uphill has lawns, they got sprinkler systems. Is there gonna be a variant on these lots where they can't have sprinkler systems, where you're adding more water into the area for runoff? There's just a lot of concerns. And I think it began from the start where they were trying to squeeze everything in this area because the perk test that they did was during the summertime. And then they just recently had to do another one, I believe this year, September, August, which was in the drought, of doing a perk test. I've been in construction for years. You want to be your worst case scenario, perk tests are usually spring and fall, wet season, not the driest time of the year. So why would you want to do that near the wetlands? Obviously, because you want to squeeze in as many lots as possible. I just see all these homes going into this one area. We're supposed to be protecting the wetlands, but let's squeeze and let's ask for other variants to allow us to be even closer to it. I'm not against someone making a profit on their land. I'm happy you have the lot and the land, but you're trying to disturb the wetlands to squeeze as much as you can out of it so you can get as much into your pocket. I just think six lots, 5 lots is fine. The neighborhood, I don't know if you guys drive around the area, there's nothing like it in the area where you're gonna be squeezing all these homes in. Stephentown Road is on the corner. A few years ago, they've been putting all reflective signs because there's no lights out there, there's sharp turns. Now you're gonna add extra driveways on a blind corner where you already got signs out there to help people direct them in traffic because they drive a little faster than normal. So now you even got more traffic, more hazards in this tight little area. I just don't see the point of why you should be squeezing in all these lots. He was mentioning lot 7 and 8, the land being slightly pitched into the runoff of the wetlands. Actually, if you go out there and walk it, it's actually a little back pitch towards my land. And in the spring, it's completely saturated. I do have photos of the water that comes out my curtain drain, the 6-inch pipe that pours out down along the road. The water that pours over the top of my stone wall in the spring. And it's something I had to do to take care of it. And if you look in the photo that I have of it, there's 2 6-inch pipes. One is for my gutters and my curtain drain that I had to put in around my basement and on the inside of my basement, because when I dug for the foundation, I hit water. And then you can see the 6-inch pipe that is the curtain drain for the runoff. And one has nothing coming out of it, and the other one, it's a roaring flow of water. So there is excessive amount of extra water that runs into this area. And like I said, there's other possibility of other building lots that are gonna run into this area also. And I think you should look into consideration of the future people that are gonna build their homes there that are not aware of these problems, and to protect the wetlands. I also have a photo of that road being flooded because of the amount of water that is not able to keep up going underneath the road. And on top of it, all this extra water is going to flow downstream that they're not being conditioned for. It's just an excessive amount of water going down there, and who knows what they're gonna have for problems. So I just think on your end, if you should look into more consideration of protecting the wetlands and the amount of water that's actually coming off that hill, because there's an excessive amount in the spring that's coming off of it. And I don't know, I don't have photos, it's on my phone. I mean, I can get photos for everyone to look at, but it's up to you. I do have them.
Would it be reasonable to ask for those photos to be part of the record?
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody from the public, just like a resident wants to write a letter to the commission or something like that, if you want to submit
I
some.
can have the photos.
Yeah, why don't I give you my card? You can email me.
All right.
Does that work?
Yep, will do. I appreciate it. And I think that was it. Thank you very much for your time.
Just one question. I didn't catch your name.
Sebastian Mazzano?
Thank you.
Dawn, do you got the spelling on that last name?
Okay, other members of the public would like to speak?
John Sundell. I live across the street, the northern boundary across Stephen Tom. A little lower, all the runoff from that site will be coming down across mine and my cousin's property and following down through. A lot of things were said. You know, they're cramming a lot of lots in here. Excuse me. They're claiming a lot of lots in here. We don't have the Wetlands Commission's notes. He stated that they didn't have many concerns. I felt like they had quite a few concerns. I'm not sure what the ratio for frontage to interior lots is. I'm not sure this meets that, but I'm not an engineer. These are very split up maps. It seems very hard to follow them. As Sebi already stated, there are parts of this land that were standing water for 1 to 2 months, a year, multiple years. We had a concern that they were wetlands. We were told it was resurveyed. No, still not wetlands. You'll see in some of the pictures that he shows you, we still feel that that might not be correct. They've said these are certified soil scientists. That's what they said. That's what we go by. These are people that are still employed by the applicant to try to fit as many lots in here as possible. This is a major wildlife corridor on both ways coming into Steve and Tom and coming out to Penfield. With this amount of lots and houses, it will definitely increase the water runoff. The roof drains, as he said, who's monitoring those for debris coming off the roof, filling up with leaves, filling up with everything else, and then what's gonna happen? The water's gonna come over the gutters, it's gonna hit the ground, it's gonna disrupt the soil, all that's coming to the wetlands, all that's coming across. They're gonna remove the 15-inch pipe inlet for the 18-inch crossing. What's that gonna do? It's gonna increase flow. It's gonna increase velocity. Coming across to the brook on the other side, it's going to create a deeper, wider groove through the land. I just wanna make sure that all the stuff's being taken into consideration. Yeah, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other members of the public?
How y'all doing? Alex Bowyer, property owners, 29 Steventown Road. It is the one lot that's getting surrounded by all this. There's gonna be a lot of blasting going on with this. I guess my house is surrounded by boulders, all of which came out when they dug out the land to build my house. You can see all the blasting marks through all the boulders surrounding it. So, my wife works nights. She's probably gonna be up most of the day if they do decide to build here when they're blasting. The other thing is the water table. How's that gonna affect our wells in the area? I don't know if this was mentioned before or not. Those are just some of the concerns, kinda worried about, you know. I also have geothermal heat, so I'm also using groundwater to heat my house and cool it. So, like I said, if they put on all these properties around, I mean, it's probably gonna affect the water table a bit. It's definitely increasing demand on the system there, or the water table itself, so. Those are just all concerns I have about this going in. That's all I got.
Thank you, thank you.
Other members of the public who would like to speak?
My name is Caden Mazzana. I live at 67 Steventown Road with my father. I have just a few questions about the low point, because as it was mentioned that low point does fill up with water whenever it rains. And he mentioned about how the pipes would overflow and with specific amounts of rainfall. And I also had concerns about the amount of driveways that was being put in. I understand that they are being kind of like redirected, but I don't know how exactly all that water from the driveway is going to be redirected, because we have water, as my father said, we have water that runs down our driveway regardless of the drainage system that we have down on the side, and it floods a lot, and all that kind of, oftentimes it runs into the road. So I can't imagine how 2 more driveways would affect the amount of water that pools up in that low area, because after like even it rains even like a little bit, it kind of, those grates fill up, and there's large, not like fill up, but there's large pools of water down in that area regardless. And I can only imagine in the winter time what's going to happen to all that water is it's going to freeze. It's not going to be able to drain. And my other concern would be with the amount of salt that the town likes to use for the roads in the winter time, and how the sort of like drainage system's being affected, and where all that salt is going to go, and is it going to damage the wetlands?
I think Frank did cover some of that. Would you like to do a summary for us, Frank?
If everyone has comments.
Okay, you wanna wait until the end?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll ask Frank to address your concerns at the very end.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, other members of the public who might like to speak?
No worries, everybody's getting used to it, so it's just nobody online can hear you, so.
Sorry, Dan, did the selectmen submit a letter to be read or anything?
We emailed a letter to the commissioners that, from an email, I believe it was from.
Yeah, from Kate.
Yeah, so yeah, we did submit that, and we added it to the file for the record.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, and we will, at some point, mention that he did submit a letter,
Okay.
and which way he felt.
Sure. Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak? Anyone in chat? No one in chat. Okay, I guess, would this be appropriate time to reference the letter that we did receive?
Sure, if you'd like, yeah, and then, Frank, do you want to provide some information back now, or, and then provide more information back later, or?
Wherever the commission wants, I can do it either. Of course, anything pertaining to the conservation easement and things like that still require information to the Conservation Commission. So that whole discussion still needs to be done.
Yeah, I would agree that we should get Conservation's recommendation.
I do have some ideas to address John's questions and issues, you know, hopefully.
Oh, I'm sorry, Frank. Sorry. See, I don't even know. Yeah. Frank, would you mind reiterating what you said, just for the record?
I said I can do either discussion now, or if you want to do it at one of the later hearings. Probably better do it now while it's still fresh in everybody's minds. But again, as far as the land trust conservation easements and the set-aside stuff, that's a conversation we still have to have with Conservation Commission. And that will come back, to this commission. I do have some ideas that I'm going to propose. I think John will be at that meeting as well with the Conservation Commission, so hopefully we can resolve a lot of his concerns. And the just a clarification, the two areas he's talking about that the land trust owns, they are not contiguous. They're separated by Steve and Tom Road, and so. But he basically is looking for access from his existing land trust out to Penfield Hill Road. That's what really he's looking for. That continues his connection to go from one across the road to the other, which I understand. Not as an easement, not as a conveyance to the land trust. But again, that's all for discussions, with the Conservation Commission. If the commission would like, I can go through the various comments from the public.
I think, should we wait for feedback from Conservation?
Well, maybe on the Conservation, it's up to you. We're certainly going to have more meetings. I think Frank makes a good point that, some of the people here have addressed concerns, and, it is fresh, so you got to hear it. But, I don't want to be totally unmindful of the time and how you guys want to handle it. So it's totally within whatever you guys feel.
Thoughts?
Well, a lot of the concerns were wetland-based and water drainage and.
Yes, a lot of overlapping discussion.
So it might be better if we wait until we get the recommendations from the wetland commission, just so that we have everything in front of us. So
I was not planning on addressing anything regarding wetlands.
Yeah, so if you could filter those
Because
out,
that's
perhaps,
not part of this commission's purview. So I won't even, I may mention it, but I won't discuss, anything to do with that. Until that commission makes its decision. That has no real bearing on this commission until they make a decision.
why don't, could we ask you then to touch on the responses that you would like to
Yes. Yeah.
address?
Starting with John Lashane, I do understand his desire to create this connection. Easements don't work for them, they need to own the land. He's also was looking for some tremendous amount of, again, conservation easements well beyond the wetlands. That's unusual to go too far beyond the wetlands because of this 100-foot regulated area that exists around the wetlands. But that eventually comes back to this commission, you know, maybe from wetlands or maybe from conservation, but the protection of the wetland, I think, coming from the wetlands will address, put to bed a lot of these questions and issues as far as disturbance and things like that. One of the concerns that, not as a designer, but as talking to realtors and developers when they talk about conservation easements and adjoining open space, one of the things that most residents find objectionable is the idea of the public walking, you know, next to their backyard or next to the back of their house or near close to their house. That is a major issue with residential developments. If that can be accomplished where the intrusion does not really affect the residents' privacy, that's one thing, but in most subdivisions, that's very, very difficult to accomplish. With the exception of, you know, some obscure part of the site, that corner piece at Penfield Hill Road where the brook comes across, you know, lot number 2, that's an exception probably. But to look at that large wetland and use that for public, you know, public ownership and public access, there's a major objection to that type of thing. It's one thing to have stewards to monitor the actions along the boundaries of a conservation easement. It's a very different thing to have ownership and rights of public access to that easement, which becomes a major objection to those property owners and the developer. Again, people's privacy, they may not be far enough they can be seen, you know, from that easement or from that wetland. That becomes a major issue. Protection of the conservation easement in the wetland is one thing, but when you start talking about public ownership and public access, there's a lot of objection to that. And again, a lot of comments about wetlands. Seb Mazadas, you know, he's talking about all kinds of problems that he has. Yes, those things are designed into site plans now. Seb's house was built 22 years ago. The technology for this was there, but you have to understand that groundwater exists everywhere. Houses now have to have footing drains. Most septic systems have to have curtain drains. There's drainage around the houses for swales and diversion. That's all standard practice for detailed site development plans for everything now, has been for quite a while. If the engineer is experienced and knowledgeable, he's going to take care of all that stuff. A lot of it is shown on the subdivision plans. It's identified as a need. Curtain drains, the footing drains, the swales around the houses, that's all part of these plans, because even though it is a concept plan, it identifies the things that need to be addressed when somebody gets to the point of designing a very, very detailed site plan to address the water. There's no question, there's a lot of water coming from off the property across the lots 7 and 8. But that is not unusual. That can be controlled and designed properly. Septic systems are not a problem. Wells are not a problem because you pump whatever you pump out of the well goes back into the ground. So it's a 100% recycle. That's not a problem. Wells in these areas, I don't believe, have had any kind of issues. Blasting is a concern. That blasting is for one house that's at the very top of the hill next to the existing house lot. That's not going to have any impact on the wetland. It's nowhere near the wetland. It's 2 driveways and a lot separated from the wetlands. And it's blasting. It doesn't affect the wetlands. Has no effect on groundwater. It's at the very top of the hill. Traffic, these roads are relatively low traffic use roads because of where they are. You know, adding these subdivisions like this really don't add much additional traffic. Not enough to create issues of overcapacity, overstressing the road system. All the lots have identified proper sight lines at the curb cuts to make the access and egress, you know, safe. That's all part of your regulations. As far as the soil testing and that, the site was heavily tested 2 years ago and perk tested. We had to do some follow-up testing because we missed a couple of places where we didn't do any test pits. The soils out there are relatively well drained, the subsurface soils. There is a shallow groundwater, you know, 3 feet down, which is very common for most of the soils in town. And that is addressed through design of drains and septic system designs. This is a very common occurrence for land development now, and has been for quite a while. All the properties that are nice high sand and gravel have long since been developed, and you know, no such thing left anymore. The roof drains. Anyone that doesn't maintain their gutters and their roof drains in their house is going to have a much bigger problem than a little bit of erosion. They're going to have water in their house, they're going to have ice dams, they're going to have serious problems. So most people either put these leaf drains on or leaf screens on, or they keep those gutters clean, because if they don't, they have much more problems in the house than anything that happens outside. Again, there's no different than if those gutters, downspouts, were left to run out onto the ground, which is also common practice in a lot of places. Does not cause a lot of erosion. You know, once the site is stabilized and seeded, grass and everything, you know, those problems don't exist. Culvert replacement. Basically, the replacement of that culvert, you know, whatever water is going down through that culvert, whether it's going through the pipes or over the road, it's still the same amount of water. The pipe enlargement is to reduce the frequency of water going over the road. That's really what that's for, and that came out of discussion with Public Works and the town engineer a year or more ago when we sat down with the town for initial review. They recognized, I don't know how it got to be that way, but they recognized, and my analysis showed that, of course, the pipes are insufficient to handle, you know, all the various storms. That small inlet pipe is particularly a problem, and by removing that and enlarging it, the frequency flooding over the road will be reduced. And that's really the whole intent. It doesn't prevent the road from topping because that whole system is not designed for huge rainstorms. Most culverts are not. There is shallow ledge in some areas of the site, particularly up on the top where the watershed divide is. The back area, those 2 large lots, the 2 interior lots, there is shallow ledge up there. And as far as blasting has a very specific requirement procedurally. You have to go through the fire marshal, you need a permit, most times you have to do some kind of a survey, a site survey of anything around you. That is a heavily controlled process. And I don't see the problem. Again, blasting for foundations is not unusual. It won't occur on all the lots, probably maybe 2, maybe 3 at the most. And depending on where the house is placed, you know, there may not be any blasting. The depth to ledge varies quite a bit around this property. So I mean, you know, you could find a place where you wouldn't need any blasting at all. The gentleman who bought the existing house lot there used to be owned by Mr. Olson. The gentleman that spoke was talking about these huge boulders. Those boulders were not blasted. Those boulders were excavated we run into these massive boulders in doing excavation. They are not ledge. They are just buried boulders, and it's amazing how big they are and how many they are. That is another problem in itself. It requires a little bit more machinery to move them around. But those large stones, and if you go up past the lot when there's no leaves on the trees, and if you look on the side embankment, you see this nice stack of these huge boulders. And some of them are like half the size of a car. But that is the nature of the soil types out there. Those are not ledge. That's not blasting. And that we will find everywhere on this subdivision. As far as salt, road salt, I mean, whatever the town is doing now for road salt is not going to change. We're not proposing any new town road cul-de-sacs as part of this, which would be something the town would maintain. Some people may be using sand and salt for some of their driveways. Most of these driveways, with the exception of 2, don't have that kind of a problem, slopes and distance. A couple of them do. But again, these things that water goes through either a detention basin on one side of the subdivision, or that water just sheet flows into through the woods and overland, and a lot of that is going to dissipate, is going to be absorbed by the soil before it gets to the wetlands. A number of statements were made tonight regarding the wetland and what they think and what they were saying. Most of them are not true. You will find that when they finally make their determination. Some of these people are quoting the wetlands people and what they're thinking and what they're going to do. Not the case. If you look through your consultant's reviews for the wetlands, he found no real serious situations that were being proposed that would have a negative impact on the wetlands. Again, this is part of the wetland area, but he also made comments on the planning and zoning side that were kind of mixed into that wetland review. But again, throughout his memos, both of them for planning and zoning and wetlands, he was taking a very strong look at where everything was and what kind of impact they had, not just the wetlands, but everything else. I think that pretty well covered. I think the major issue really before the commission is going to be the conservation easements and what comes from that and how we deal with trying to accommodate John Lashane's concerns.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, for the record, I would just like to reference one letter that was received by the town, and it was from Caden Mazzata. And I will not read the whole letter. It's a little over a page, but it will be in the record if anyone cares to read it. And Mr. Mazzata is opposed to allowing this application to move forward. Anything else I need to reference about that? Sure. Okay. Okay then. Any last comments from the public before we table this? Okay, so as discussed earlier, this hearing will be tabled until.
I got a motion to continue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah, it's really.
There you go. It's a nice short one, if you don't mind.
A motion to continue public hearing for application 2206 Penfield Hill Road and Stephen Tom Road, proposed 8-lot re-subdivision with wetlands on site, application and property of Robert W. Olson, map 61, lot 14, zone RR.
May I have a second to the motion, please?
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion is approved, and we will continue this discussion at our next meeting, is it, Dan, or?
So if the commission would like, we could discuss it amongst ourselves, but I think it would probably, I mean, we're not gonna get the inland wetlands decision to the second meeting in December. We could discuss conservation at the first meeting in December if you'd like. If you'd like to break it out in that way. We should have the conservation's recommendation this month. And we can talk about those implications in December. I'd like to give the public some clarity.
Yeah. Is there some reason why we should split them up?
It's whatever you'd like to do. So if you'd like, we can table this as long as the applicant will, I think, Frank, you need to give us an extension, but we could table this to the second meeting in December and take more time after that if need be.
Let me explain the scheduling, and why the public meetings and hearings have kind of occurred the way they have. I have a very unusual schedule for the last 3 months and the next 2 months that have me away from home and making it impossible for me to make certain meetings. And I tried to arrange with Dan and tried to arrange with the application so that your public hearings, the opening of your public hearing I was able to make, the closing of the wetland public hearing I was able to make. There were meetings in the wetlands, their second meeting I could not make, so it was basically extended to the meeting Tuesday. You don't have the extension problem but until you get into December. But because I'm not available to be at the meeting 2 weeks from now, I would ask that you table any discussion because the applicant not being present, and I don't know if the public wants to keep coming back, but I will not be available, and I would ask the commission to just table it and have no discussion or no action of any sort until your December meeting.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Any problem with that?
Yep.
Okay.
I will have to give you an extension, not for the first meeting in December, but for the second meeting.
No, just for the public. Do you want to just do it all at the second meeting?
I think so.
Okay, all right. So just so, I don't want to waste, obviously, this has been a long
Right.
night. We'll probably have another longer meeting. So just to kind of make sure we're not wasting everybody's
So,
time.
and what's the date on that then?
That would be, I believe, December 14th. December 1st is a Thursday, so let me just double check for you here.
And then conservation, when is that meeting?
It's December 15th. Conservation, I believe, is November 9th. But John, would you mind checking in with me tomorrow morning? I could look, if you have a moment, I can check right now. It's on the website. But I do believe it's November 9th.
And then December 15th is our,
Yes, is the next planning and zoning, would be the next meeting we discuss this application. Yes.
And I'll have to get you an extension for that.
Yeah, but we can wait until,
Yeah, we got.
yeah, we got time.
we got time.
So the wetlands decision is just gonna come in, is that it, or are they having a meeting?
Wetlands is closed.
They still,
They don't have to make a decision necessarily at the December meeting. I anticipate them, but if they don't, then we'll have to ask the applicant to ask for a longer extension.
okay.
November 16th.
16th? Okay, so it's I'm sorry, John, November 16th.
November 16th.
Yes, yep.
Is what?
Is
Oh,
the
inland.
Oh, no, but I'm talking conservation, I believe, is November 9th. Conservation. Oh, no, you're looking at Board of Selectmen. Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Conservation should be next week,
Yeah, conservation, I believe, is the 9th.
right, next week.
It's the second Wednesday. They meet at the library. Yes, not in the normal traditional room to the left.
Did you say, what? What did you say?
The Conservation Commission.
Is what?
November 9th.
Oh, November.
Yes.
yeah.
I believe they're 6:30. Their agenda will be posted on the website. And this is included.
Okay, and so just to be clear though, if for some reason, they don't make a decision on the 9th, the conservation people don't make a decision on the 9th, and/or wetlands doesn't make a decision on whatever their date
Okay,
is.
so December, if wetlands doesn't make a decision in December, the applicant will have to ask for extensions into January. If conservation doesn't make their decision November 9th, they still will have an opportunity to make a decision the second Wednesday of December, which will be before the third Thursday in December, which we will be discussing this.
Okay, okay. But I guess what we're saying is, I don't think we want to discuss it until we have.
Yes, no, and that's fair. And not that this could, if say we ran out of clock, for whatever reason, the applicant would withdraw and they could then resubmit it if need be. But yeah, so there is a good amount of clock, but I believe wetlands would have to render a decision in the January meeting. Their clock would run out before ours, so you should get all of the decisions prior to when our clock runs out. And typically, conservation makes the recommendation at that one meeting. I'm not aware of them pushing it to a second.
Okay.
Okay, clear as can be.
Yeah.
Clear as,
I keep a 2 or 3 month calendar in front of me at all times.
I've seen Frank's calendar. It's scary. Very cluttered, so.
Okay, but the soonest we will discuss this again is our second meeting in December.
Correct.
December 15th.
Yep, December 15th, yep.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we did the motion to continue.
Yep.
Okay, so we're good there. So now we'll move on to our regular meeting. And on the agenda, we have application 22-09, which is 1116 Portland Cobalt Road. We will not take any action on that tonight because we are, I believe, awaiting more information from them. Okay? So we'll move on then to new business. And this must be one of Dan's. Fee amount for 378 Cox Road subdivision. So we'll wait for Dan to finish his business, and we'll cover this.
And you said this, this 2209?
2209, we're not gonna take any discussion or any action on it today.
Yep.
Tonight. So Dan, we moved on to new business, which is the fee amount for 378 Cox Road subdivision.
Okay, you probably all remember you guys did a 8-lot subdivision for 378 Cox Road. Unfortunately, the clock to file the Mylars for that expired. But the applicant still would like to have a subdivision. So they need to go through the process again. In that, the applicant has requested that we consider reducing the fees because all the reviews have been done. I would still certainly require them to get, pay the fees like for signage and things of that nature. I believe the fee is about $3,400. We are entitled to all of it if we want it. If you want, I can try to reduce some of the engineering costs in that fee to make it a little more manageable for the applicant. But it's really whatever you guys want to decide. So if you have questions, if you want to.
That's our purview?
I asked an attorney, and he said we could, you guys do set the fee schedule for planning and zoning, and this is a consideration that you could have. So if you want to just direct me as simple as reduce the fee as much as feasible so the town doesn't lose money, I'll try to do that. That would probably just be easiest. If you want to say the fees are the fees, they are what they are, we can do that too.
So in your professional opinion, the reviews as they exist are valid?
They are going to submit the exact thing that you approved
And
When did we approve this?
when was this?
last year. It was
Near Great Hill Pond.
Yeah, it was like maybe around the same time last year.
Great Hill Road, Cox Road.
You gave him a 180-day extension, I feel like, in January or February.
Do we set like some sort of precedent though, if we, I mean, the whole point is to give you a certain amount of time to get things done.
So
And if we like do this, do we have to do this?
no, you don't have, no, so you can go through the same process. They're not guaranteed the same decision.
A little bit?
I'm gonna be sending this to Jeff, and everyone's gonna look at this again. I don't think Jeff's comments are gonna change. So it's, I mean, if you wanna think about it, we can talk about it again. But, you know, I know the applicant wants to move forward, but in this case, I think they would probably wait 2 more weeks. I'm still gonna charge him for all the signage. I'll have to charge him for the legal notices. And I would probably charge them some money for Jeff, yeah, but it wouldn't be the full 3,400. But it could be a precedent, you are right. I certainly would, I think it would be an easy one to say no to on any new application. I think just the circumstances in this one is they will be submitting 100% the exact same application that they did last year. So it should not take Jeff long to do a review.
So, we could make this contingent on the fact that it is 100%, you know, identical to the prior application, and the fees that they would pay would be something along the lines of the costs.
Yeah, I would probably still be a little more than the cost, just to make sure, because I take the fees up front. So I talked to Jeff and kind of get a ballpark figure of what he thought it would be and try to put that together and maybe add a little padding. I don't know, maybe half of what the fee is right now. I'd want to look into it a little more. You know, I'm not trying to make you guys give me like a number.
No, but it's your time too. And that's
True.
not involved in the fees, and there's paperwork, and that's.
Right,
it's just-
yeah.
There's a lot of hidden expenses as well that go into it that aren't quite as straightforward.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, on the building side pays for itself, but zoning and wetlands are basically just subsidized. Our fees don't cover, you know, our zoning permit fee is $70, the state takes 60. We get 10. So,
I think, my opinion, in the interest of being relatively easy to do business with, I think we should look at some sort of reduction.
okay. Do you guys, I just want to make sure you guys are on the same page.
That's just my opinion.
If you wanted to have a motion, you can make a motion and take a vote. If you want to just, if you guys feel somewhat unanimous about it, I'll just take that direction and run with it. If, I don't know. I'm trying not to make this confusing.
I don't particularly like setting the precedent of doing that, but I'm not gonna object enough to make a stink.
Yeah, I would say this is
Go
unusual.
along with
Yeah, I don't think we've had that
my-
happen before.
you know, but I mean, I just don't like to set a precedent of that. That's my only concern.
Right, I think most applicants would like to get everything submitted the first time, because this is gonna cost them some money as well, but, I mean, it really is what it is. This is the first time I've ever seen it, to be frank. If they had gotten their Mylars filed, you know, it would have been permanent except for the improvements, unless they made any associated improvements that needed to be bonded. Do you want to think about it? It's really up to you.
No.
Okay. No? Okay.
More of
I
a.
just go along with them on this.
Okay.
I'm not passionate.
All right, so I'll run with it. I'll talk to the applicant. And then, you know, I'll come up with a fee for them and then we'll get them submitted and, hopefully that will be a less controversial
Yeah.
application for you.
Dan, just on that, is that something that's gonna come back to us? Or is that gonna be?
The Cox Road one?
No, well, yeah, the Cox Road, and the fee, whatever comes, like you determine to be, is that something that's gonna come back to us?
If you want, I guess at that point, I was just gonna run with it and take the fee and figure that out and not bother you anymore with this and just let the subdivision come in and let you worry about that. I can certainly report back to you if you'd like.
Well, the only reason why I'm asking is that if you do, handle it all on your own, just get something in writing so that if they will acknowledge the fact that if there's any changes whatsoever to the plan from what they previously submitted.
Oh, yeah, I'll make that clear.
Okay.
And I'll just administratively tell them if it's a different application that you're paying the full fee. Yeah, yeah. So I think that's well understood, but I certainly will make sure that that is the case.
Good point.
And Jeff will take a cursory look at this as well. He has every application we've ever sent him in his files, so he's gonna. I know it's crazy.
You must have a huge office.
He's got it's very nice. They had the 50th anniversary party. I actually used to deliver office supplies there, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, so he's gonna have a second pair of eyes on this as well.
Okay.
Wow, that's a big item.
Yeah. So now we move to old business, update to our cannabis zoning regulations.
Okay, so I don't have everything I wanted to have for you guys here. It's been a little crazy. The building official had foot surgery. He can't drive.
Oh, dear.
So I'm having to kind of.
So you're a chauffeur?
Yes, yeah, yes. I don't know if I get paid as well.
Uber Dan.
Yeah, so, where did I put that? All right. So I did do the map. And I guess to preference this map, I did find out it wasn't East Hampton that limited the number of cannabis retailers. It was the town of Cromwell. I spoke to their planner today. They actually, that was an ordinance that was passed by the selectmen. So I haven't, Carrie was on medical leave. I'm supposed to maybe have a call with her tomorrow morning or early next week, so I will get the official legal opinion on that. When I talked to John today as well, John Guskowski, he wasn't even sure if the ordinance was legal. So I'll get more information on that.
So you're saying that they're covering it as an ordinance as opposed to a zoning regulation?
Correct. Yeah, so that's how they handled that.
Okay. Well, looking at the map that you sent us with the circles, it looks like it would be complicated if we start trying to say you can't have, a dispensary within X amount of distance of, something. I was thinking we might be able to simplify it and just say that you can't have a cannabis dispensary within 4 miles of an existing licensed dispensary, which would cover every area that a permit or.
So at that point,
Yeah.
I feel like we should just be honest
Yeah.
and do the prohibition. Because somebody's gonna call and I'm gonna tell them that, and then they're gonna actually
How
maybe
big is
think
your
it's
town?
possible. I mean, my point with this was, if you look the area that it would actually exclude on the 1,500-foot side, it's not covering any of the areas that you would potentially be concerned about. It's not allowed in those residential districts. You weren't gonna allow it in the B3. It would just have been the small slice of B2 where the existing store is. We certainly can do the 4-mile thing if that's what you want to do.
My concern only is that I don't know where they're at with the licensing with the state. If they don't get their license, if they don't get the permit, then while they're approved, they're not going to be able to have a cannabis dispensary, which means that somebody else could come into the town with an application and do it.
That's a good point.
And so that's why I want to avoid doing a prohibition, because they're not a guaranteed thing yet. They have our permission, they're waiting on the state. And until we hear from them, whether or not they get their application approved and they're licensed to be a dispensary, I would rather be more permissive than anything else. And that's why I'm a little bit more adamant about the, radius thing rather than a, strict prohibition.
What
But
about
then-
continuing the moratorium?
That's an option.
I mean, as a way of, you know, let's see if he establishes this business and then.
Right, because, I mean, I would say, you know, that is a good point,
That's a very
Rob,
good
but the
point.
other side of that is, well, what if somebody does come in with the license? We've already approved this guy.
Well, so this wouldn't affect the approval. Whatever we do here is not gonna affect the approval at 78 Marlborough Street.
Right, but he's saying, what if they don't actually,
Get approved.
he doesn't get his license and he
I-
doesn't.
I don't wanna,
He was here.
yes, I don't want to change your decision-making process in any way in how we're going about this and the time we're taking to go about this. The owners are waiting for action from this body, kind of along the lines of how many stores are gonna be in town before they move forward.
Before they sink a ton of money into
Right,
it.
so I don't wanna I know it's we're getting in the chicken and the egg thing here with them. I still think you guys need to take as much time as you need to come up with a reg that you're happy with. I certainly take your point on the 4 mile thing that would open up another license to an applicant or another, so I definitely take that point.
What about if he fails for some reason?
Well, that's,
Then we
So the only complication to that is that approval runs with the land. So if you go and approve a different one, because I'm just gonna get, it's gonna get a little sticky,
It runs with the land?
the special permit, yeah, the use. So if they open up a dispensary there
Okay.
and it closes,
But they would have to
traditionally,
open it, though.
traditionally, like, if you went, like, when somebody goes retail to retail here, like, if you're selling candy bars and then you want to open up a store to sell newspapers, I don't generally have them come back to you guys, because it's already been a retail use established there. So I guess I need to do some figuring, because I've never seen such a distance as 4 miles. So I want to talk to Carrie about 4 miles and whether that's even something that could work. I mean, it's a good idea, I think, now that I'm thinking it through. And then I can kind of talk to her about, you know, how it'll work. So let me think about, let me look into that 4 mile thing and get back to you.
But what you just said about the going with the land, so if this thing never opens, it's not going, I mean, it's been approved, but.
Somebody could acquire that land and probably act on that site plan. Now, it's only, if they don't open in 5 years, they can ask for a 5-year extension.
Yeah.
And the zoning permit will expire after 10. But if they do open, that might complicate the 4 mile thing.
Because we approve the site, not the person.
Right.
Right.
I mean, the other thing is that we could just be direct about it, saying that, the town only, will have one licensed
Oh.
dispensary.
This is a very important point that John told me today that I was not aware of that might ease your concerns for a little while. So the 25,000 one store, that is good until January 1st of 2024. So we could rely on that state statute and then make a decision.
Well, I thought they said that changed back in.
It did, but
July.
John's telling me that
Somebody could still make an application.
somebody could still make an
And-
application.
And
That's fair point.
as soon as January 1st, 2024 comes around,
Yep.
that application would be valid unless we have some kind of, something on the books or a moratorium.
Correct.
So, that's great, but it doesn't really change
Okay.
the fact that we need to do something.
All right, well, yeah, let me look into the 4 mile thing, and then we can take it from there. And I guess, yeah,
The ordinance still?
I can try. Well, I haven't even talked to, I mean, you'd have to see if the selectmen have the appetite to do that. Cromwell picked 2, my understanding is, from the planner. It was because they had 2 applications in.
She was just joking.
Oh,
I think where Rob was headed was,
I'm gullible. You guys are in my circle of trust, all right? You can't mess with my circle of trust.
I think where you were headed, Rob, was just say 1 per town, 1 per Portland.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can do that.
But that's what he was saying was not legal the last time.
When
But then
speaking with-
Cromwell did it as an ordinance.
Right, but I'm still not sure if that's legal. So I'm gonna ask Carrie about that. I'm gonna ask Carrie about the 4 mile part as well. I got a whole bunch of stuff for Carrie now.
Or 1 per 25.
I don't know if we can do that.
Oh,
The
Well,
4
I think
mile
the
thing is
end goal
actually pretty creative.
For whatever we decide to draft up is to get one licensed dispensary
Right.
in town.
Yeah.
Because that's what his business model was, that's what we've approved, that's what, everything we've discussed in the past has been based off of, so.
Well, and I think it's,
That's what we need to do to get that, I think.
and I think it's your comfort level too, seems to be there. That's what, I personally, I don't think the market's gonna bear a, ton of, maybe because of the traffic in town, that is a possibility. I just don't know if the market's there for somebody to invest $2 to $3 million.
Correct me if I'm
It's
wrong,
probably
though.
there.
I don't think we as a commission should be tailoring our decision based on his business model, based on one person's business model. That's my feeling. Because I just want to get that out there.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, I don't know, we kind of thought that we had agreed to that anyway, because those are the conditions under which we had approved his thing. We were still under the one for 25.
Yeah.
That's really what we were thinking.
Right.
That's what I was
We
thinking.
liked his
Yeah.
restoration of the
Right.
octagonal
Yeah.
house
Right.
and his use of it as just his
Yeah.
whole business plan was something that we thought fit into, at least for me,
Mhm.
fit into, the direction that I'd like to see retail in this town go. And, taking an historic building and, kind of doing the best you can to bring it back to its former glory. And so there was a lot that had to do with his specific business plan that garnered support from me. And, regardless of what it was that he was selling, and also his care and thoughtfulness about how things were gonna be presented and his security and, all of that played into my decision to say yes, for sure. So, I don't know that I would have said yes had it looked considerably different than that.
I understand your concerns though about, making a regulation based off of an individual applicant.
Right.
And I know that a lot of my, at least my discussions have been, focused on like at least his business model. But a lot of our assumptions were based around, the one
Yeah.
dispensary
Right.
per 25,000.
Right.
And I know we made several comments of being like, Portland's never gonna get that level of residents where we're gonna see,
Another one.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, keeping, his, interests separate, it's, they're like, what I think we all had envisioned originally was, one
One.
dispensary.
Right, those were our interests,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? We didn't want 5 dispensaries.
Right.
Right.
Right, we wanted just the one.
Right.
We got lucky that we liked the one.
Yeah.
Now, Dan, is there, any way, we might be able to reach out to the State Cannabis Control Commission and see what they recommend? Because they're the ones who are kind of creating all the regulations and seeing all this. And I'm sure we're not gonna be the first town that's having this issue of how do we, grapple with this change and make it legal?
So I'll try to reach out to them. It wasn't them though that said no more. That was a legislative thing.
I know, but they're,
So.
the ones in charge of regulating it, and so having their input, since they're dealing with this on a daily basis from all the applicants, they might have some insight, at least of a town that, made it work, or, at least they looked at it and said, this is a legal way for the local zoning board to handle it in a way that, keeps it consistent.
Well, yeah, I'm also hoping Carrie has some insights, just because, she's in a pretty big firm that deals with a lot of municipalities. So she may have a different, looking through this in a little bit different lens that might find a way to satisfy you guys. But we still have a bunch of time.
And that 4 mile thing is,
It would be effective.
Sure, that's 4 miles.
You might even be able to be honest. We could look, and the one thing we could look at is, you know, oh no, we got over here too. All right, well, yeah, let me look into it. I was just thinking if there was a way we could reduce it to like 2 miles, but now that I'm looking at the
Yeah, I was going the
B1
other
zone.
way. It's like maybe
I played around with a circle drawing.
Oh, okay.
Online.
Yeah.
I tried 3 mile radius, and it, from the location that they picked, it wouldn't reach the 4 corners. So the sections that are just after that
Okay.
would be eligible.
All right, so that's what I was thinking. Exactly what you did. Okay.
All right, so more to come.
You got it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, goody.
Okay, next item is online material repository and training.
So I'm still committed to doing this for you guys. I know you want to. I didn't have the time for this one.
I have a comment about this, and I want to make sure I'm recorded. I heard what you guys said about me.
It wasn't.
I heard it.
I shared your legitimate concerns with the board, and we wanted to make sure you were comfortable. I don't think there was any negative connotation
I
there.
was just cracking up at how incompetent you think I am when it comes to my computer.
I was simply sharing, I was reiterating concerns you told me.
No, I'm just teasing.
So-
When you don't show up to
I know,
meetings,
boy, I
you
tell
never-
you.
Yeah.
But just remember, it's all recorded, so I can hear it all. But Dan, did you see I sent you an email?
Well, it's been, well, so we had CCM on Tuesday, so I was out all day Tuesday, and I've been driving Miss Daisy
Okay.
the last 2 weeks, so it's been good to hang out with Pete a bunch. But it's been taking like 2 hours out of my day every week, so.
All right, well,
Well,
I just wanna let
I'm
you
lucky
know-
I didn't have foot surgery, so.
I just want to let you know that I have a Gmail account, contrary to everybody's belief. I have a Gmail account, and I believe I hooked it up onto my laptop by myself without my son's assistance.
Okay.
And I think I sent you an email.
No, you did.
Oh, I did?
No, I saw it. And I was hoping that I would have time today because I wanted to share this again via, but I only had time to finish the map and then
Okay.
kind of move on to the next thing.
But sometimes, maybe, should we bring our laptops the next time we come here again?
If you think it's easier for you to use a laptop, absolutely. You can bring your laptop whenever you like. I mean, we can do let's go through another round of sending it out, and then if we need to do some sort of training, we can do that either as a whole or individually. I bet Rob's gonna need the training. Yeah, Rob needs the training, so.
Give the training.
Rob's not ashamed to say it.
All right, let's move on.
Yep, okay. Next item, staff report. Any correspondence, dear?
Only the letter in opposition that you guys received.
Okay, that was read into record. So we'll move on into public comment. We have no public in the room here. Anybody in chat?
We exhausted them.
Yep, so we outlasted them. So next item is to approve the minutes from October 20th. And I was informed last meeting that voting to approve the minutes does not require that you were present at the meeting.
I'm also going to double check that with Carrie, because when I'm reading through the opinion Michelle sent me, it was more regarding the transition from like one board to the next.
Oh.
So obviously I feel like I'm eating crow, but that's fine. I'd like to just get it right. So this is another thing I'll be talking to Carrie about. She's going to hate me.
That was another thing that I learned when I was listening to the meeting.
So present at that
I'm happy
meeting-
you listened.
So
That's
we'll go
nice.
with the attendees at that meeting.
Yeah.
Then was myself, Rob, Carolyn, Victoria, Ken was an alternate, and notably Chantel was not at the meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 20th?
So, second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved, and may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the meeting is adjourned.
Dawn, you got that?
Thank you.
Just the first, it was getting a little crazy at the end.